webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Appreciate David's job even more, huh? He makes it look easy. Okay, I have 8:41. We'll call the meeting to order. Thank you all for being here this morning. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Board Member Wood,
Here.
Board Member Burris,
Here.
Board Member Carr. Present. Board Member Driggers,
Here.
Board Member Thurston,
Here.
Board Member Rodwell,
Here.
Board Member Jones.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. First order of business is approval of the minutes of April 14th. They look good to me. Is everybody satisfied? I need a motion if there is.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve
I
by
will second
Mr.
that.
Thurston, second by Mr. Jones. Any discussion of the motion? Call for the vote. Madam Clerk?
Board Member Wood,
Yes.
Board Member Burris.
Yes.
Board-
Yes.
Thank you. Board Member Carr.
Yes.
Board Member Driggers,
Yes.
Board Member Thurston,
Yes.
Board Member Rodwell,
Yes.
Board Member Jones.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 7-0. Public comment. We have certain items on the agenda, but is there anyone here that wishes to speak on any other topic? On any topic? Anyone wishing to speak? Yes, sir. Come forward, identify yourself. Give us your name and your address. You'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Yeah, my name's Nicholas Brown, 2762 Gulf Lake Drive. And I just have a question.
Yes, sir.
On an item before the board, on this first issue, and I don't know whether I should wait or should speak now on this item as far as PB 2020-31. Am I speaking at the correct time, or should I wait?
This is part of this will be a public hearing and be a quasi judicial public hearing. There's some procedural question you have, or?
Yeah, it's just basically a very simple question, and that is, as I understand it, the PD identifies the land in question as 2 unplatted units, units 40, and I believe it's 56A. And as I understand this is to, the issue before the board is to approve a preliminary plat. And I'm just curious as to how this is done when we have 2 previously identified unformatted plats on the PD.
This is something that could be heard during the public.
Yeah, I believe we will address that during the hearing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for raising it.
So we talk about it.
Yes, sir. Would you like to stand up and identify yourself and give us your name and address for the record?
My name's Dennis Bobby, and I'm here about the Firestone planning at the end of San Island Road.
That case needs to be heard.
Everyone will be sworn in and given testimony at that time. Is it something that can wait till we get to that item? Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm asking. Is now's the time or wait?
No, sir.
Okay.
No, sir.
All right.
Thank you for your interest. But
Do you have something to say on the agenda we speak now, or we keep it on the agenda?
no, this is for items that are not on the agenda. Okay. So some people may come in here bothered by trash pickup, or something, This is the chance for anything not on the agenda. Yeah. It also applies to things that might be on a future agenda that we know about, But so mostly it's things that are outside of this meeting. So anything else? Okay, then we'll proceed. Close public comments. The next item of business is quasi judicial public hearing. So this is going to require a swearing in of everyone who wishes to speak on it. The clerk will do the swearing. If you'd please stand. And if you plan to speak on any of these items, you need to be sworn in. Madam Clerk, please proceed.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Okay. Now, to be perfectly honest with you too, if somebody just has to speak, it wasn't been sworn in, we can make an exception and swear you in one by one. But thank you all for standing up. First item, PB 2020-31. This is Sumner Creek Town Homes preliminary plat and waiver request. We have staff to present. Sir, would you go, please proceed.
Thank you. Ross Einstetter, planner with the City of Plant City, and I have been sworn in. Project for you right now is PB 2020-31 for Summer Creek Townhome preliminary plat and a waiver request. So just put this slide in as just a reminder that the preliminary plat is just a draft posed by the property owner and/or developer, which is reviewed by staff and planning board. The purpose of the preliminary plat is for the city and other agencies to provide the developer direction in the earliest stages in the development prior to a lot of resources being extended to the project. And I know this project has had a couple issues with drainage, so if approved, the next step would be construction plan review, which would take into consideration the details of the drainage, the roadway detail, and sidewalks and et cetera like that.
And they'd come back again to this group?
No,
No,
final plat,
the final plat would come back.
correct.
That's what I mean.
Not construction plans.
Yeah, I understand.
But by that point, they should have it all figured out.
Yes, sir. I just want to make sure the audience understood this is a preliminary, and there'll be a final plat,
Correct.
which will come
Yeah.
for the group again.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you,
Okay.
sir.
So the request is for a preliminary plat establishing a 98-unit townhome development with a waiver request from requiring the installation of reclaimed water lines. It is located on the north side of State Road 574 between Turkey Creek Road and North Lake Boulevard. Its current zoning is C1A with future land use of residential 12. At 19.85 acres, the proposed 98-unit townhome development would have a density of 4.93 units per acre. The smallest proposed lot size is 21.88 by 102, which is 2,231 square feet, which is larger than the required 20-foot lot, 1,800 square foot lot required by the townhome regulations. This is the proposed preliminary plat for this project. Just a little bit larger for you guys to see. This is a proposed elevations for the townhomes that they want to build. And then the waiver from providing reclaimed water is being requested. The utility department has no objections to the requested waiver, noting that reclaimed water lines are not available to the site. Staff has reviewed the preliminary plat and associated waiver for the Summer Creek townhomes for consistency with the technical requirements of Chapter 94, Chapter 102, and the Imagine 2040 Plant City Comprehensive Plan. Staff recommends the planning board find the preliminary plat for Summer Creek townhomes consistent with the technical requirements noted above, and recommends the approval of the preliminary plat and to move forward with the waiver to the City Commission with the recommendation of approval. And that concludes staff's presentation.
Okay. Does board members have any questions for staff? Let me make sure I understood. I think there's a creek that runs through there, and that's why I see the properties on both sides.
Exactly.
And the property to the north is within the boundaries, but it's not being developed, apparently.
That is correct. Yeah. No, that up in the top there is
Yes.
not part of their property.
Oh, it's not part of the property?
Correct. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
just the left and then to the right.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying. Any other questions for?
Let me ask a question on the reclaimed water. Is it not close? Do you know if it's close to there? Do we not have any reclaimed water lines anywhere in that area?
I don't believe they're anywhere in the area. Utilities would normally say that they're, within the
Within.
distance that they need to connect.
What is that distance? Do you know?
Off the top of my head, I do not know.
You want to answer that? We could find out.
I would like to know that.
But
Yeah.
the distance they are from it.
Correct.
Okay.
Is there someone from the utilities department with us today? Well, perhaps you can find out before we
Okay.
get through this item, or at least before we get through the morning.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll do my best.
Would that be okay?
Sounds
Okay.
good.
Mr. Brown raised a question. How do you want to approach the answer at this point, or do you want to wait till later in the presentation? I think, sure. Actually, I was talking to the group of you. You're all clustered over there.
So Robin just mentioned that in the code, it says if they're 250 feet or more away, they require to
Just to connect, but for the question, they would have to extend the reclaimed water line more than 250 feet. And so the question is whether we get, within our capital improvement program, the likelihood of extending the water lines within that 250 feet.
Okay.
As my understanding is that Liz Spivey, who's the director of the utilities, checked off the box that it was. They had no objection to that.
Correct.
They're just asking how far it's.
Oh, okay,
It's more than just a 250 standard.
correct. Yeah, in this case, it would be more than 250, but I'd have to get the exact measurement.
Can, maybe during some point you can reach Lynn,
Okay.
find out what that should be.
Okay.
Or if your curiosity will abate, she was going to be doing a presentation today, but she's asked to postpone it.
Oh, okay.
So we'll be hearing from her, I would assume within a month or two.
About
So-
reclaim, right.
Okay.
Oh, Liz Spivey?
Would you be willing just to let the question lapse until she comes back to do a presentation?
We could do that, I guess. My concern is we have a lot of development, and if we're anywhere near the reclaimed water lines, water is one of our resources I want to protect. So if we're at 260, to me, I'd like to know that.
Gotcha.
I think we need to focus on using reclaimed water here in Plant City with all the development we have coming.
Well, I think your intent is clear, and maybe even better to express that intent to Ms. Spivey,
Okay.
who'll be here again in 1 or 2 months. Yeah. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Okay. What about the question Mr. Brown raised? Is it appropriate to answer that question at this time?
Mr. Brown is actually here about a different case, not this one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Loaded the case number. So we'll,
So no. Oh, okay. Okay. I'm sorry. I thought, my mistake. All right. Is the applicant present? Yes, sir.
There was a lot of confusion. So they were supposed to be virtual, but they are currently not. They sent me a statement to read because this item was already continued because of a resident came and asked a drainage question, and the applicant wasn't here at that time. So his statement says, the stormwater analysis for this site will be based on the Hillsborough County regional model and will comply with all federal, state, and local requirements. The analysis will demonstrate that there is no adverse drainage impact or to note upstream or downstream of our site.
All right.
So the applicant's not here, but
Okay.
they were addressing the comment from previous meetings.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Miss-
Is that are they saying before this moves forward, they would be in compliance? Or are they just agreeing that they
Yeah.
would be in
So
compliance before
after
this
stage,
advances?
they'll go to the construction plans where they have to deal with all the drainage
Okay.
issues for the site. And so it won't move past at a certain point.
So they're just giving assurance that they're aware of it and that they'll,
Yes, exactly.
If there's concern about the reclaimed water line waiver, you have nothing before you to tell you. The applicant could have said what the distance was, and the applicant
Yeah.
could have said if he had been,
If they've
Right.
been here,
if he'd been here.
Yeah.
And so I just want to point that out, that that's a,
it bothers me.
if you want to defer this to another meeting, you could.
I won't want to make a motion to approve this or recommend approval because the applicant's not here. So I'm glad to make a motion, and it depends on you all. I'm glad to make a motion to defer it.
to continue it. I think it's so preliminary and the applicant isn't here. And I think the questions about reclaimed water, we can expedite that because, it comes up.
Next
So
meeting.
I think a continuance doesn't seem like it really has a strong impact from a negative. So I will support a continuance.
I know, still public hearing. So we'll go through the rest of the things. All right, well, I got some board thoughts there. At this point, I'd like to ask if there's any citizen input, any public comment on this Summer Creek townhomes preliminary plat. Is there any public comment? Please step forward. Give us your name and address and state for the record that you've been sworn in.
I've been sworn in. My name is Alice Griffin. My address is 3900 State Road 574, Plant City. My property line comes next to theirs.
Yes.
And first of all, I'm concerned that we continue this meeting and yet we have no show from the person that is interested in this. That concerns me. Then we talk about later, there will be a phase where you look at drainage and you look at the roadway and you look at the sidewalk. However, that isn't a public hearing, and I'm concerned about that. I want to know what they're going to do with the water. I also heard that there is no impact from this development, according to what we just heard. However, there is going to be some kind of impact because we're looking at putting a lot of places there, apartments or condos or whatever you want to call it. However, with that, there also comes paving. And I looked at the EPA and it says 90% of there will be 90% of the water runoff from this. Well, we need to know where that water is going. I'm looking at previous, we have started back years ago in Walden Lake. And all of that water runs down this same canal. When it gets so far, there's no place for it to go. And so you're even looking out on Highway 92 and the water is up to the bottom of the road. So we have to look at this because I personally have property that I don't want to be subjected to that. There's enough problems there already. And I'm asking that this not move forward until we know what's going to happen. I can't keep taking on water. If he wants to buy my piece of property and he wants to make it a waterway so that he can build this, I'm ready. I'm ready. It's up for sale. If you want to buy it, it's up for sale. Because I did see the pictures that you displayed of what that they intend to do. But there's also questions about, is this HUD? Is it Section 8? Or what is it? And I've also heard some of the members here voice their opinions about where's the playground going? If they're putting 96 places in there, then there's probably 2 children at least per household. So we're looking at something else.
You're out of time, so make a concluding statement, please.
So I'm asking that I be involved in this. And I'd also like to say that, yes, I was on vacation in North Carolina and I drove home 600 miles to be able to be here today to face another no-show. I mean, I think it's unfair to the citizens that are out there because I'm not the only one impacted. I just happen to be the one that's right next to this property because the rest of the people have no idea. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Griffin. We're still open for public comment. Again, this is on the Summer Creek Town Homes preliminary plat. Any other public comment? I'll ask once more. Any other public comment? Close public comment. Okay. Thank you. Appreciate you all. Staff, is there anything more you wish to add to this?
Just to address a couple of things.
Sure.
The townhomes are fee simple, so they're not going to be Section 8 or HUD or anything like that. They're going to be sold to individuals. And I'll get the residents' contact information and I'll give it to the applicant so they can
work with. That's
right.
Ms. Griffin.
I think that would be
Sure.
best because she has a lot of concerns that
Sure.
need to be addressed by the applicant.
That's a good strategy. I agree. Okay, thank you. Board members, what's your sentiment? Still
My thought,
continue?
I'd still like to
continue?
continue it. That way they can, the resident can talk with the developer and that way we can figure out the reclaimed water. question that I have.
I'll second that motion.
So you're moving for a continuance of this item.
Correct, yes.
Do we need to specify the time
Well,
period?
date certain, I think that we probably gonna want to have the notices set, anyway, is that correct?
Set again, you mean?
Yes.
I think that'd be advised, I think it'd be advisable under the circumstances.
Notices to be signed, so it probably doesn't matter as much, but does staff have a recommendation on that? I mean, in terms of date?
Would you
The
prefer?
point is that the applicant show and answer questions, plus you're gonna have to get utilities. You probably want to have the city engineer's office here. Because there's issues.
Gotcha, yeah. I mean, you can recommend no date certain, but it probably will be next month. But in that case, I'll be able to send out the notices again, just so that people know when the actual meeting is, rather than, potentially could be next month.
All right, okay. So just a move to continue and just leave it open.
Just a move to continue, leave it open-ended. Do
So-
we understand? So it's a move to continue with no date certain.
Well, I think since the applicant's not here, we're not even sure if we set up a date if it's.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
Any discussion of that motion? Okay, so we have a motion and a second and no further discussion. Madam Clerk, you can call for the vote.
Board Member Wood,
Yes.
Board Member Burris,
Yes.
Board Member Carr,
Yes.
Board Member Driggers,
Yes.
Board Member Thurston,
Yes.
Board Member Rodwell,
Yes.
Board Member Jones.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. 7-0. But we should expect it to be on the next month's agenda. Correct?
Assuming the applicant shows.
Assume the applicant should.
Big
Yeah,
question mark.
that might be a key to that one. Yeah.
I don't
It is
recall when this was set before, was it a date certain or was it?
Date uncertain, I
Date
believe.
uncertain?
I believe.
I don't think he had to take this time.
I'm almost certain. I'm almost certain it was a date uncertain, put it that way.
Okay.
And I guess before we move on, are we hearing from the applicant? I mean, do we know why we're having this? This is the second time? I mean, I think it's
He
really.
intended to come today, but there was a mix-up. His assistant said he was gonna be in person, and he called me this morning saying, can I have a link to be virtual? And I couldn't get a hold of IT, so I couldn't send him a link. So he had every intention of being on the meeting today, but
Being virtual.
he's not.
I thought.
So hopefully next meeting.
Yeah.
We should be good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. Anything else on that item? Okay. Next item C, PB 2021-02, Fieldstone Plan Development District. Staff, would you please sign in? Yeah.
Good morning, Robin
morning.
Baker, Senior Planner with the Planning and Zoning Division, and I have been sworn in. PB 2021-02 is Fieldstone Plan Development District rezoning. The site is located at the southeast corner of East Sam Allen Road and North Wilder Road. It's approximately 32.56 acres in size, has a current future land use of Hillsborough County Residential 1 and a zoning of Hillsborough County Agricultural Rural, which allows 1 unit per 5 acres. The request is to rezone the subject property from Hillsborough County Agricultural Rural to a planned development to allow 294 townhome units. This is just an overall view of what the PD site plan looks like. The applicant currently has a future land use amendment filed, which is PC CPA 20-08, to change the future land use from Hillsborough County Residential 1 to City of Plant City Residential 9, which would allow up to 9 units per acre. If approved, the subject property would be allowed up to 295 units. The applicant is proposing access to the site from an extension of Sam Allen Road and not from North Wilder Road. The access that's shown on Wilder Road would be for emergency access only. So as we get into the presentation, we'll talk about the transportation study and how they are required to extend the bottom half of East Sam Allen Road to provide access to the site. The applicant is proposing an enhanced buffer along the southern boundary in order to help buffer the impact to the larger lots to the south. And the definition of that buffer is a 10-foot buffer as required for section 102-1373, which is essentially the 10 feet with trees every 40 feet with a continuous hedge. But they're enhancing that buffer by including a 6-foot fence, as well as spacing the trees only 30 feet instead of 40. This is a concept plan that was submitted by the applicant, so you could see the actual lot layout and the open space and the parks that were proposed. They are proposing a playground as well as a pool amenity and some other parks dispersed throughout the site. I mainly wanted to show you this concept plan so you could see that southern boundary where they're providing that enhanced buffer against those larger lots. So you could see they're showing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 buildings across the bottom there. Again, this is just a concept plan. This is not set in stone, but just something that they did provide so that you could see what the layout was going to look like. A transportation study was conducted, and the results of that study was there were a couple of improvements that were required. And what we mentioned before was constructing the southern half portion of the future 4-lane road section of Sam Allen Road from Wilder Road to the site access point. And then at the Sam Allen access, as part of that extension, they're required to do a 205-foot eastbound right turn lane. Those requirements have been added to the site plan as note number 13. The applicant is requesting a couple of specific approvals as part of this PD. The first is the section 102-353-6C, which deals with the type of curbs that are required for townhome developments. The code requires an F-type curb. Just so you understand what that is a vertical curb, and the purpose of that curb is to try to prevent cars from rolling over it, okay? Those are pretty standard in our code for roadways. They're requesting what's called a Miami Valley type curb, which is a mountable curb, meaning that the car can drive over the top of it, but it still allows for the proper drainage way. So basically what we're dealing with in the code at this point for townhomes is that when the townhome code was written, there are allowances for townhomes to be developed with large parking lots in front of them. They don't all have that garage access. Well, then when you start putting those driveways so close together for those buildings, then you're going to have these teeny weeny little curb stub outs all the way across. And so it's more appealing to the eye as well as ease for the cars to be able to just drive over the top of that curb, that separation from the road. So they're asking for the Miami Valley type curb instead of the F-type curb. They're also requesting a specific approval to allow a 512 roof pitch in lieu of a 612 roof pitch. We're going to take you back to algebra class and talk about slopes. Okay, so those are your rise over run, and eventually, essentially it's just talking about the angle of the roof as far as how steep the pitch is or how flat. The code requires the 612, which is the graphic all the way to the right. As you can see, it has a little bit higher of a pitch. They're asking for the 512, which is a little bit flatter, but still has a good pitch to it. You can see from the two, there's not a large difference between the two pitches.
Why are they asking that? I can understand the curb issue.
I'm sure it's just the type of townhome, but I'm going to let the applicant answer that for you, okay?
That's fair enough. That's fair enough.
Before I get to the recommendation, I'm missing a slide here for whatever reason, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about the intensity of this project as opposed to what's around it. As we all know, we do have a regional hospital coming to this area, and staff's opinion that it's really going to change the landscape of this area for the city. And I expect to see some changes to the allowances in this area in the city. And so a big part of staff's recommendation is based on the fact that we are going to need more housing types in this area to serve that regional hospital. So staff is recommending that the rezoning request from Hillsborough County Agricultural Rural to Fieldstone Plan Development District be found consistent with Article 4, Division 8 of Chapter 102 of the Tennessee Code of Ordinances and the Imagine 2040 Comprehensive Plan, if the PCCPA 2008 is approved by the City Commission, and for it to be forwarded to the City Commission with a recommendation of approval along with the waiver or the specific approval requests that are part of the PD. I'm here if you have any questions.
You don't have a graphic that shows us where this plot is in relation to the new hospital?
Sure. So on this map, you can see the proposed R9 piece is the subject property. If you look to the left there where that blue line is,
Yes,
that's the location of the hospital.
okay.
The red piece is the piece that fronts on Park Road, and the other piece is the part that they recently annexed into the city that is part of the greater
Okay.
project for the hospital.
And so Sam Allen Road stops at the corner of the property, so.
Correct.
And what's the space between the R9 and the hospital? What is that space right now? Houses. Those yellow blocks are houses?
There's some agricultural uses in this area as well. Those are all properties that are located within unincorporated Hillsborough County. And for the most part, they're 1 unit to the acre up to 4 units per acre. There's some RSC4 that's scattered in there as well. But for the most part, they're 1 unit per acre.
Bonnie?
Obviously, you know, at the townhouses, it's causing the waiver request. And I'm wondering if staff has already kind of made an assessment that maybe we propose a change so that the exceptions, you know, don't need to continue. I don't know how much time it takes to, say, address the sidewalk if it doesn't work for townhouses and some of those other things. So are we starting to look at what the differences are for these types of developments before we get too far down on this?
We had the same conversation yesterday with the Board of Adjustment because another case, because it's not under a PD, had to actually go for a variance for the same thing. And yes, we did discuss looking into adding that to the code because there are other separations in that townhome code that have different regulations for the different types of parking. So maybe we could do the same thing in the code to allow the Miami Valley type curb when they're doing the front load garage type unit. So we will be looking into that in the future about maybe adding that to the language or making some changes.
So I think it's helpful to know that the staff has had an opportunity to kind of look into this before because the exceptions may vary with each property. So I'd like to get the standardization ahead of that. Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions for staff and the board? Thank you. The applicant, would the applicant like to speak? Please give us your name, address, and state for the record that you've been sworn in.
Good morning, Elise Batzel, Stearns Weaver Miller, 401 East Jackson, and I have been sworn. We're going to go into a little more detail for you, just so that you can see not just the development, but some of what we're proposing within the development. Before we get started, I just wanted to address one thing based on your question, and that is with respect to the curbing. All of that Miami Valley curb is internal to the project, but we're required to comply with city roadway standards within the development. So that would be a waiver for our internal roadways, just to clarify that before we start. We are here with our entire team. Height is part of our team, our planners and our civil engineers. Our transportation engineer through the city is Steve Henry, and the applicant developer is Cardell Homes. Both Kent Hillman and Dean Hill are both here for specific operational and construction questions. As Robin mentioned, we've been through several hearings already. The comp plan amendment has already been before this board, and we will go now on Monday night. City Commission transmitted the comp plan amendment. So this will be the final hearing before the planning board. We did have a neighborhood meeting after our planning board meeting related to the comp plan amendment. There was a neighbor that was here and had concerns. So we did hold a neighborhood meeting. That was on April 22nd. Notices were sent out to all neighbors within 1/4 mile, just to make sure that we were very inclusive of the broader neighborhood. We sent it to 68 addresses that was included in the 1/4 mile. We did only have 5 attendees. You've already seen the vicinity map, you know where this is located. This is just an aerial to show you that it's currently agricultural use. This area is within the activity center. If you look at the Fieldstone project, the little black box, that's our location. And just south of that, you'll see the large diamond. That's the intersection of Park Road and I-4 that begins that commercial activity center. Due to the proximity of the activity center, this site really is a good transition from all of that commercial along Park Road over to more intense residential development. In addition, this property is within the northeast quadrant of the vision plan, and this area in particular is specifically slated for residential redevelopment in your plan. The other thing that's very interesting, if you look at the approved planned roadways in your CIP plan, you'll notice that this property, Sam Allen Road, extends to the corner of Park Road. We will be extending it all the way to the entrance of our property, but it is planned for a future extension all the way to Swindle Road. So this is an area that you as Plant City have said will be extended in the future. Robin's already gone over the land use, so I'll go through this quickly. As you can see, this shows a little bit more the proximity to the hospital site. All of the area up and down Park Road, of course, is within that commercial activity center. And just to the north of Sam Allen Road and Park Road is the North Park Isles development that has been approved. So I'm going to skip over. This is the regulatory plan. And of course, I can go back and answer any questions that you want. It, of course, shows generally where everything is going to be located, but we did provide a color map that is a lot easier to read. So if you look at the plan, you'll see that there's a central area that's going to be a stormwater pond, a little internal lake for the development. We do have a dog park and a village green and additional green space. One of the comments that I heard earlier was, they were concerned that this was going to be low-income townhomes. We've developed, this is market rate. This is not low-income townhomes. In fact, we have added a lot of amenities to make sure that you understood that this was going to be a quality development. We've also added additional buffers, which Christy is going to talk about in a little more detail, but there are buffers all along the eastern boundary, landscape buffers, the western boundary, and then again, this enhanced buffer with a fence and landscaping along the southern boundary. We are proposing 294 townhome units. The maximum building height will be 35 feet. The building setbacks, just for your information, are 20 feet in the front, 20 foot in the rear, and 10-foot sides. We do have two specific approvals. Of course, the first is the 512 pitch. Just to give you a little bit more information about the roof pitch, that's the prototype for these townhomes. We do have renderings that we'll show you as well, just so that you can get an idea. There are 4 typical types that Cardell does. We've brought a couple of samples for you, just so that you can get a feel of what it might look like. Here's one of them. This is, oh, nice fancy animation there, Sheila. I'm not used to having animation in PowerPoints. There's the rendering. This is the Southern Prairie style, just to give you an idea of how the units are broken up and bifurcated. So you're not looking at a big mass structure. There's actually relief so that you can see the individual townhome units. This is the modern farmhouse architectural style. Again, you can see the relief, and you can see that they've used different materials in order to make it more interesting and not so cookie cutter.
Question.
Yes, sir.
Are you implying that there's going to be different styles of buildings in this community?
Have you determined? Yes. I'm getting
So
nods.
it's not going to be one monolithic,
Exactly.
same
We
look.
have 4 different types. So within this development, there'll be 4 different
Okay.
types of buildings, and they will alternate.
Just want to make sure I was reading you correctly. Good.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
With respect to site access, The community is proposing 2 access points, but only one is going to be an actual full access point, and that's off Sam Allen Road. The small location at Wilder will be emergency access only, and we'll have one of those knock boxes so people cannot go in and out. The townhomes are proposed to be in groupings. Those groupings would be no less than 4 and no more than 8 townhomes in any one building. It is going to be a gated community, and we've already talked about the Miami curve. At this point in time, I'm going to turn it over to Christy Barrio. She's the certified land planner with Height, and she's going to walk you through more of the site design and how the developer really tried to bring quality elements and amenities into the community.
If you would, please give us your name and address and state for the record that you've been sworn in.
Good morning, Christy Borrero with Height Design, 5904 Hampton Oaks Parkway, Tampa, Florida, and I have been sworn.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to go over some of the amenities that we're proposing for this plan development. Again, in the zoning, per your code, there are multiple types of amenities that are required in each of your developments. So wanted to take a couple minutes to talk about these. We're going to have 5 unique amenities. The circles show where we're proposing the playground and the pool. We're also going to have a trail around the central lake, a village green farther south, and a dog park in the northeast corner is proposed. So the playground and pool area proposed near the entrance of the community, and as you can see from this rendering, we're proposing to have ample parking for those uses as well for residents that choose to drive or their guests. The applicant has also worked with their architect to create monuments and signage for the project that will work well with the architectural types for the buildings themselves. And you can see here is a rendering of a conceptual pool design and also bathroom areas. So again, as I mentioned, we're proposing to have a lake in the middle or pond in the middle of the project. This pond is about 4 acres in size with about a third of a mile trail around the pond. And as you can see from this rendering, we're proposing that the trail connect to the pool and the playground and also to the streets within the project. So residents from anywhere in the community can get to it and use it for exercise or to get to some of the amenities in this community. We're also proposing a village green. And this green, we're really thinking is going to be a place where neighbors can gather for special events for the community or, you know, private gatherings, birthday parties, that sort of thing. And we're also proposing the mail kiosk be in this area. And then finally, we're proposing a dog park. And as you can see from some of these images, we'd like to have benches for the dog owners to sit, but also activities for the dogs to, you know, get all their energy out in the park. I also want to talk about parking. The resident parking will be on the individual lots. So as you can see from the architectural rendering, we're proposing that the end units have 2-car garages and the internal units have single-car garages. And there'll also be parking in the driveway for the residents. And then guest parking will be provided as well. I've circled some of the areas where we're intending to have guest parking. As you can see, it's around many of the amenities, but also spaced out so that any resident that has guests over, their guests won't have to walk far to guest parking if they can't park in the resident's driveway. I also want to spend a little bit of time on the perimeter buffers. Along the north, west, and east, we have roads that are adjacent to the property boundary. So we will have the 10-foot perimeter buffer that's required there. Along the southern boundary, we do back up to some private properties. And so we're proposing an enhanced buffer that includes a fence And as Robin mentioned, we're also proposing additional landscaping in that area. We have talked to some residents at the neighborhood meeting and also been out on the property. There is some vegetation along the southern boundary. So we really want to work with each individual resident on the southern boundary to figure out what additional landscaping will work best for them. We don't want to plant something that, as you can see, some of these trees are already tall that are not on our property, on our adjacent property owner's land. So if we planted, a bush, it may die because it's too shaded in that area. So we're going to work really carefully with them to figure out what landscaping is appropriate and what they may want to see there. So I'll end with a picture of the concept plan, and Elise and I are here to answer any questions that you have. And as she mentioned, the applicant's here as well as the engineer.
Is there any further applicant remarks? No? Okay, let me see if there's any questions. Board members, any questions?
Hey, Art, I have a question.
Go ahead, Mr. Burris.
I see that their main entrance is waiting on the future East Sam Allen Road extension. What happens if this community is here before East Sam Allen Road gets here? Will there just be a partial road to there for now? Just kind of curious.
Yes, the plan is the applicant will construct the road from its current terminus at Wilder to our project entrance. We're proposing to build the southern 2 lanes and then also provide right-of-way for the road to be built farther east. And then when the future lanes need to be built farther north, that right-of-way from our property will be given to the city or the county.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. I read once something called a dry pond, which sounds like an oxymoron to me. But are you certain this pond will have water?
I'm looking at our engineer. He's saying yes.
Certain. Okay. And again, you mentioned a mail kiosk, so all 294 residents would be going to one place to pick up their mail?
That is the plan. The U.S. Post Office doesn't like to drop off mail at individual residents anymore. Right. So they really want these one place where they can have all of the mail. So they make one stop instead of 294 stops. So there will be a group of mailboxes there.
Okay. So make sure I understood. Any other questions?
I've got a question. Is there going to be any restriction on how many rental units? In other words, what I'm concerned is just somebody, an investor come in and buys a third of them and decides he wants to rent them out. Are there any restrictions there as far as what can be rental and what's?
Well, these are going to be fee simple townhomes that are sold to individual owners. We won't be able to sort of restrict what each and every town owner does, but I don't know, do you have regulations, Ken, that restrict any kind of short-term rentals or anything in the code? Yeah, so because this isn't going to be owned by Cardell, they're going to develop it and then sell it out to each townhome owner. It would be treated like anybody else's house or townhome already in.
Typically, though, those kind of restrictions, I guess, are tied with the HOA versus the developer, but I didn't know if there were any plans to restrict
I'm going to look
that.
at my clients. I think the answer is no, not at this point. I don't know that we've actually thought about that, to be honest.
Is there a plan to create an HOA for this entity?
Yes.
So the HOA could craft rental
Yeah, like a
rules,
short-term rental restriction, I'm sure they could, yes.
but we don't know.
Question, is it deed restricted? Is it going to be deed restricted?
When you say deed restricted, explain a little more. Like
yeah, for the fee simple, would the buyers be subject to some?
So we'll be in for a plat. So we'll have to, this will all have to be platted into individual lots. And so that will bifurcate each little piece in a subdivision into, smaller pieces. If that makes sense. Maybe I'm not. Oh, of course, absolutely. I mean, like any development, there will be common area maintenance that will have to happen, and there will be, a DCCR, declaration of covenants, which will govern the property, the maintenance of the signs, the maintenance of the dog park, And individual owners, of course, will then collectively pay into the fund that will maintain the common areas, just like any other development. Yes, ma'am. Sorry, I didn't understand your question.
Any other questions for the applicant? Anyone else wish to make on the applicant's behalf?
No, we'll reserve any
Okay,
questions.
yeah,
and
we'll
come
come,
back.
we'll cycle back. Yeah. All right, thank you very much. This is the opportunity now for public comment, citizen input. And if you would, please give us your name, address, and state for the record that you've been sworn in.
Good morning. I have been sworn in. My name is Chandler Faticone, and I live at 3201 North Wilder Road. I'm not a public speaker, so I appreciate your grace here.
I appreciate you being here.
I just wanted to start with something that the applicant mentioned, that there were 68 addresses that received documentation that there was a neighborhood meeting. That is fake news. We did not receive that documentation. They don't have proof of mailing to us. And the picture that they posted of the 5 quote unquote attendees, none of those people are my neighbors. So they have not communicated that to us at all. I also wanted to take a moment to look at that seal behind you and see that the very heart of that seal is strawberries and agriculture. It is not 294 townhomes. Over the past few months, the city of Plant City has required my attention on matters that I never expected to be a part of. Baycare Hospital and Height Design have decided to capitalize on my dream home, which you saw that little yellow box on their picture. They have quickly turned my family's dream into a nightmare. We have been told that not only are we going to be sandwiched between 2 huge construction zones, but the lifestyle that we know and love is being threatened. I bought this home 3 years ago so that I could raise my family in a safe and peaceful environment. My husband is a combat veteran, 2 tours to Afghanistan. He has PTSD. We chose this home because it offered security and peace. Now some bureaucratic institution simply seeking profitability is robbing a veteran and his family of that peace and their home. Neither of these corporations are prepared for the fight that my neighbors and I will give them if they continue to threaten our way of life. I have heard no presentations about what the city of Plant City plans to do about over 300 residents taking shelter in these homes. They have not communicated how this infrastructure is going to impact the contributing taxpayer that already takes residence here. Plant City Police Department already fails to police the city limits with the limited staff that they have and that they possess now, and there are going to be over 300 residents who are not homeowners threatening the safety and security of my family. Building these homes devalues my home and threatens my family's safety. I chose this home to raise my daughter in the country with limited neighbors. Who is going to compensate my family for this forced change in our lifestyle? My husband and my daughter both have asthma. Who's going to cover our medical bills for complications caused by construction? This is the 4th day that my husband and I have had to take off of work to attend one of these meetings. Who is going to compensate us for those lost wages? During construction, I would be embarrassed to host guests at my house due to the mess and the environment surrounding my home. Driving is going to be a nightmare. The rainy season is going to create a mud hole. Who's paying for all of that? At this point, we are seeking legal counsel to represent us and give these money-hungry corporate bureaucrats a taste of their own medicine. The only way that you're going to silence the fight in me and my family is through proper compensation or to cease construction. Before you today, you have an angry mother, a veteran's wife, an upstanding member of the community, and a woman who's not afraid to fight. I know I have 3 seconds left, so in conclusion, I'm here today so you remember my name and my fire. I know the developers sitting behind me can hear me, and I hope they are ready for a fight. Rezoning this farm for development is not what the community wants.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're still open for public comments. Yes, sir. Please come forward. Give us your name, address, and state for the record that you've been sworn in.
I'm Dennis Spivey. I live at 2812 Dan Kendrick. I've been living there since 1969. I own the 10 acres on the southeast corner.
You've been sworn in, Mr. Spivey?
Yeah. Do what?
You have to state for the record that you've been sworn in, Mr. Spivey. To state you've been sworn in.
I'm hard of hearing and I don't understand what you're saying.
Have you been sworn in, Mr. Spivey?
Yeah, I'm sworn in.
Okay.
When they
got you covered.
Okay. All right. I've been living there since 1969 and I farm. I got 9.9 acres. It's the southeast corner of this 32 acres.
Okay.
And I thought I owned a piece of property in this little tit that stuck out there, but the lawyers give me papers, which I will send to my attorney saying I signed it away in 72. I don't remember it, but I got the paperwork anyway. My concern, there's a power line that comes down the south side of that, goes to my son's house. And then it comes across my field to my tractor barn. It used to go to a pump. I have a 6-inch well there. She assures me that the planning lady, I think, said 10 foot off the line, they're gonna build a fence. TICO requires 15 foot to work lines. Even if they put it underground, they got room to go in there if something goes wrong with it. Another thing that scares me is I'm not gonna stop farming it. I've been farming it since the 70s, and I'm gonna be spraying. And we have a lot of southeast wind, you know, and that's blowing right there. And we do spray some. Sometimes I have strawberries there. Sometimes right now we have cantaloupes. We swatch it around. My 2 boys are still farming with me. But the road too, and I hope y'all, if you approve this, you do something to Wilder Road, because it ain't changed in a lot of years. And I own a farm on 39 south of 60. You can't hardly get out on it sometimes for all the traffic going to the homes down there, you know. Sometimes it takes 5-10 minutes to get out on 39. And it is a concern because there's a lot of building going on in that area. But I know you're not going to stop progress either. I understand that. So, but I am concerned about me spraying, you know, or my boys, whichever one of us is spraying. Because we do use some pretty lethal stuff at times on some crops, you know. And the power line, I just said they assured me they're not going to mess with it. And this, on my property, I'll have my attorney to search this out and make sure. I like I say, I just flat don't remember doing it. And but like I say, I understand the growth and all this, but there is a lot of growth in that area right now. You know, the hospital, we hear a lot of sirens on Interstate 4. We definitely gonna hear a lot of sirens now. But
okay. Thank you, Mr. Spivey.
Huh?
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you, sir. We're still open for public comment. Is there anyone else here that would like to comment on this? I'll ask one more time, then we'll close it. Is there anyone else that wants to make a public comment? Okay, we close public comment. Thank you very much. Appreciate you taking the time coming up here. Staff, is there anything else you wish to add? No? Okay. Applicant, is there anything else?
Yes, sir. Just to address a couple of the comments with respect to the TICO easement and Mr. Spivey's comments, we did review the survey, and the TICO easement is actually on Mr. Spivey's property. We'll work with him to get him a copy of that survey. And of course, if there are any TICO lines within our property that aren't on the survey, you know, obviously we have to work with TICO to make sure that they're.
Yeah, I wondered about that. One of your pictures showed overhead power lines, so.
Yeah, that was showing actually from the southern boundary along Mr. Howard's property.
Right.
And that's actually on the property to the south, and I believe that that's probably a case here as well. With respect to Ms. Faticone's comments, we would, sorry? Oh, Mrs., sorry. We have had 3 public meetings and 1 neighborhood meeting, and we have had the opportunity to work with a lot of other neighbors that had concerns throughout those processes. We will absolutely also work with her and her husband to make sure that we address any issues or any comments. I'm sorry that we weren't able to do that before. There was ample opportunity. I did just go back and check the certificate of mailing. They were on the certificate of mailing. And with respect to the comment about none of the neighbors being at the neighborhood meeting, we had the Howards, the Hinsons, the Williams, and the Quaglians, Quaglian, all who live in extremely close proximity. And they aren't here today because we were able to address their concerns and work with them. So just wanted to put that on the record, and we're available for any more questions.
Those 5 attendees, were they on your mailing list?
Yes, sir. Yeah, and we did provide a copy to Robin. We actually noticed again within a quarter of a mile. The notice requirement is only 250 feet, but we wanted to make sure that we really put it out there and that people had the opportunity to come to the neighborhood meeting. But again, like I said, this is the first time we are hearing from them. we'll be happy to work with them between now and the city commission meeting, as we have with all the other neighbors through the last 3 public hearings and neighborhood meeting. Yes, ma'am.
I'll recognize Ms. Carr.
I'm just curious, the participants at the meeting, did they share similar concerns?
No, their
Or-
concerns were more about how it would affect their particular property with respect to drainage. And then the trees, Mr. Howard, in fact, is the picture of the canopy that we showed. That's his property. And he prefers to have something like ligustrums along the border rather than what we proposed. And that was the reason that we said that we're going to work with certain individual owners to make sure that the actual buffer does something, right? Because if you put low trees under a canopy, those are just going to die. So he suggested ligustrums that are going to grow up and provide extra visual. So we've been working with owners on things like that. Mostly concerns about access. We address those. Concerns about flooding. We address those. And then the buffers. Those are the 3 main issues that we just spoke about.
Thank you.
Of course.
All right, well, Mr. Spivey raised the issue of
Yes.
spray.
Yes.
How do you react to that?
Well, I mean, agricultural areas use chemicals, and we have agricultural next to residential, and people live on their own farms. It's not a new issue or concern, and those are heavily regulated these days. I'm not sure it's anything that we need to address on a specific level, but I think many people in Plant City live next door to farms. That's just the nature of Plant City, and many other areas, in fact, throughout the state of Florida, which is an agricultural area. So, as long as he's doing what he's supposed to be doing, I think it'll be fine. I mean, I'm happy to, if you have a suggestion of how we could address it, we'd be happy to consider that.
Great, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions for the applicant?
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right. What's the pleasure of the board? How do you feel? Don't all speak at once.
I guess, well, one just general comment with regards to the concerns about farmlands in between development, and just kind of reminding us of the plan that anticipated that this development was going to impact certain areas, and there were sections in the broader map that identified kind of the preservation of agriculture going out to 2040, because we know that we're going to encounter these type of things. Land close to I-4 was identified in the way that it's developing. So, as we sit here and we hear the feedback, we have to keep in mind that there is long-term planning here. And as we start to see these developments, some of this has already been addressed and it's anticipated. And, when we get to this point, it feels a little awkward for the individual parcels. But in that bigger picture, we are looking to preserve agriculture. We've identified the areas, and for sure there'll be some areas that are impacted that are outside of those specifically identified and preserved areas.
It just seems like the hospital really accelerated things in a big way too.
But it's in the designated area.
Yes, I
for
agree.
that.
I understand.
So along with the other major developers that are coming in. So I think that's consistent with the comprehensive plan as it looks at the big scope of the area.
I have a question. Ken, can you give us a kind of a status update on what their land use change, where it's at right now? I mean, this mentions that they've already requested a land use change with the commission.
Well, we have taken a hearing on that. That went before
The BOA.
That went before the city commission on Monday night to transmit it to the Department of Economic Opportunity. That's going to come back. So the idea that the PD and the land use would be coming before the city commission on the same night. Did I get that right? Is that? Yep. Thanks.
I'd like to speak.
Mr. Jones?
Bonnie had some good points. Following your points about the development coming to that area, this one's difficult for me because the density, taking over a strawberry field and developing that. But I do like the fact that we're not doing multifamily. So I know we've seen a lot of multifamily projects coming in front of us. I like the townhouses being developed there. I love the green space. To me, that's very important to have the adequate green space. This does have amenities for a family. It has the walking trail, it has the pool, it has the park. That stuff I like to see coming to development in Plant City. Again, like you said, we have development coming. It's going to be difficult, but at least they've thought about, at least it's only 2 stories. It's not multifamily, it's not 4 stories. And again, it's got good green space. So there's some plus and minuses, but I do like the thought that they put into to the project and to how they're going to develop it.
Thank you. Yeah. Any other thoughts you want to share? No.
Hey, Art.
Yes, sir. Mr. Burris?
Just want to tell you guys, thank you for your patience with me online. I just want to kind of point out, this is dense to me, not dense. If you go up and down Wilder Road, there's probably not but a couple hundred homes on the entire road from Knights Griffin Road to Frontage Road. And now we're going to put 200 homes in one corner. I do think we just got to consider the fact that we are changing this in a big way from agricultural use to more than 9 homes or 9 homes to the acre. So it's just something to consider. I do agree with Bonnie, though, that this is part of that I-4 corridor where we knew there'd be some growth, but I can certainly understand the reservation of any homeowner that's within traffic challenges of what this development's going to create, because it's certainly going to create traffic challenges. It's certainly going to be more of a burden to our school systems. And I just, as we consider voting on this, I will tell you there's good and bad here. It's great that we're going to have maybe some homes for the hospital, but it's also, there are people that live on Wilder Road and rural Plant City that this is their way of life, to live out in the country. And when we vote these things in, it just really changes that rural identity of Plant City. So I just wanted to get that off my chest. And the other thing I will also address is I wasn't completely satisfied with the applicant's answer to our, hey, are these things going to be turned into rentals? When they tell us, well, that's not the plan now. I like to have a more definitive answer from applicants in terms of what they're going to do when we take stuff from agricultural use to up to 9 homes per acre. I really think it's in the best interest of our community to know if these things are going to be sold to one person or multiple people. Because I just think that helps us plan in terms of this going to be rentals or these going to be home ownership. Big difference between home ownership and rentals. So I'll be quiet after that, but just want to share my thoughts.
Thank you, Mr. Burris. Any other comments to share, thoughts to share? Okay. Will someone make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve PB 2021-02, finding it consistent with the comprehensive plan.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Thurston. Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Second by Bonnie Carr. Any further discussion of the motion?
I have one comment. The report even tells us this plan is inconsistent with the comprehensive plan. We're approving something that ordinarily shouldn't be, or we're looking to approve something that, based on the comprehensive plan, shouldn't be allowing more than 32 residents. And we're bumping that to 292. That's a big jump from the comprehensive plan. So I can't in good conscience say this consistent with the plan when it tells us in the report right here that it's not.
I think the answer, though, is when you say consistent with the comprehensive plan, you're presuming that the comp plan that's pending would be approved, right?
Right, just the northeast, the future northeast, right. And maybe that's a better way to word the motion.
It's subject to the comp plan being amended as it was previously proposed, because correct me if I'm wrong, Robin, assuming that the comp plan is amended, you would find this to be the PD to be consistent with the comp plan.
Correct. The way the staff report is written, the only reason it says it's inconsistent is because currently it has a Hillsborough County future land use designation. So the way the staff report is written is assuming that it's approved and based on the fact that if it is approved, then we recommend approval. But outside of that, then no, we would not be recommending approval if it's not approved, obviously.
And I apologize, I probably should have corrected that motion for you.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Subject to, you want to say that subject to?
Sure, subject, the approval subject to the approval of the amended comp plan.
Thank you. Got it. Just. You want to read it back?
Let me try.
You want to read it back? Does everyone understand what we're voting on? If this comp plan change is not approved, then
that's right.
This doesn't go forward.
That's correct.
Next, it needs to be there. It's important.
And this, I guess, is an example of when we talk about the code getting in front of the project. So another example.
This was jump where it's at now.
I know.
We're not taking baby steps here. This is a giant leap. And I realize this is a projected to be a growth area and all that, but also realize there's a lot of people that live around there that.
Oh, I understand.
That are,
I understand.
It's going to be a shock.
Well, and that does make it very difficult, and it's only because of the long and past planning for this area that I guess makes me a little bit more comfortable, because it was an anticipation of a conversion, and we're here, and for those people that have been residents for 20-30 years, it's very difficult. For those that within the last 10 years that I've watched the comprehensive plan, this is kind of an anticipation. So, but it's difficult regardless. Well, it's a public document, so.
Yeah, thank you. Jesse, you have the, so everyone understands, and I think you do, but just for the record, what does the motion say?
So I just have it where it says subject to approval, but subject to approval of
The comprehensive plan.
comprehensive plan.
Amendment.
Comprehensive plan amendment.
Do we note that it's a pending amendment?
Oh, you have it? Okay.
It's in the
That's in the documents.
Oh, okay. Well,
CPA.
yeah, that number's there then.
Subject to approval to the comprehensive plan amendment, PC CPA 20-08.
All right. There's further discussion of the motion. This is just of the motion. No? Madam Clerk, call for the vote.
Board Member Wood,
Yes.
Board Member Burris,
Yes.
Board Member Carr,
Yes.
Board Member Driggers,
Yes.
Board Member Thurston,
Yes.
Board Member Rodwell,
Yes.
Board Member Jones.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion carries 7-0. Thank you. Thank you all for being here. Appreciate it. Yeah. Next item is PB 20-21-09, the Park East Community Development District. We have staff that'll speak on this. Could you give us your name, address, and state for the record that you've been sworn in?
Good morning. My name is Josh Blackman. I'm a planner at City Plan City. My address is 1910 East Palm Avenue, and I have been sworn in. Okay, so the request today is to establish the Park East Community Development District, also known as a CDD. Its location is south of Midway Road, west of Wilder Road, and north of Sam Allen Road. The size is approximately 166.05 acres, and the Park East CDD is a part of the North Park Island development.
You want to show some slides on this?
Sorry. There we go. And there's the photo there on the right-hand side. Okay. A CDD is a special purpose unit of government established under Florida law to finance basic services within a large-scale plan development, including infrastructure, construction, services, and maintenance. From the developer's perspective, a CDD can obtain low-cost financing by issuing tax-exempt bonds to finance the construction of infrastructure. CDDs have the power to collect fees, levy lienable assessments, or ad valorem taxes against properties within the project for repayment. The city is not party to any debt nor obligated under any such bonds. The Park East CDD petition was circulated to the affected city departments and other governmental agencies for review. There are no objections to the proposed CDD petition. Staff recommends the planning board find the proposed CDD petition consistent with Florida statutes, chapter 190, community development district, and for it to be forwarded to the city commission for recommendation of. And I should have Brian Lamb on the, for attending virtually if you have any questions.
Yes, Mr. Brian Lamb is on the line.
Okay, is there any, is there any questions for the staff? Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Good job. Is the applicant on board?
Yes, sir.
Good. You're welcome to speak. Please give us your name and address, and I guess you've been sworn in and I can't prove it.
Yeah. I have a notary on staff as well who just me in for these virtual attendances. First of all,
give us your name, address, and then state you've been sworn in.
Yes, sir. Brian Lamb with Meritus Corp, 2005 Pan Am Circle, Suite 300, Tampa, Florida. For the record, I have been sworn in and here as registered agent for the petitioner to establish the Park East Community Development District. More than happy to answer any questions. We'll note that your staff has done an excellent job and very thorough in reviewing for purposes of the recommendation to move forward today.
Thank you. Let me see if the board has any questions of the applicant. Okay, I see no questions. Thank you, sir. Is there any citizens input on this, public comment on this item? This is 2021-09, the Park East CDD. I'll ask one more time. Is there any public comment on Park East CDD? Okay, that closes public comment. Anything further to add, staff? Is that sufficient? Anything further to add, Mr. Applicant? All right, what's the pleasure of the board? Any thoughts on this?
Hey, Art, I have a question or a comment.
Yes, Mr. Burse.
This is something I've been on this board for a little bit. I don't think we've ever talked about a CDD that I can recall. And we research the CDD. I think I understand the purpose of it, but there's also some negative connotation to that. I guess my thought process we talk as a board is, what is the city of Plant City doing just to make sure we don't have these negative challenges that you can research on a CDD on this particular community. You can read some horror stories on the internet if you Google deep enough, and I'm understand why we need it. I get it. I understand it completely, but I'd feel more comfortable if somebody would sort of communicate to us that, you know, these are the steps that we're taking. These are the things we've learned from other people's CDD nightmares, and this is how we're going to prevent that for this community in Plant City.
All right, let me see if there's anyone on staff that wishes to comment on that. Robin Baker stepping to the microphone, Mr. Burris.
Thank you.
So, the CDD process is something that is allowed by the state statutes. The city of Plant City basically receives and processes the application, verifies that the cost presented in the CDD we feel are correct, that they're not, you know, getting more money than they actually need. And the purpose of the CDD is basically to pass the cost of any improvements on to the homeowners. Now, this particular CDD is just an extension of a CDD we've already approved for North Park Isle. So originally, they had a CDD that was done some time ago. This last year, we approved an extension of that CDD, but it didn't include this portion of the project because the PD had not been approved yet, which added this land, okay? So this CDD specifically is just an extension of the CDD that's already in place. But because they're calling that phase of the project Park East, they're developing it under a separate PD, CDD other than what was there before. We talk about CDDs as souped up HOAs is basically what they are. And the costs are passed on through the taxes for the homeowners. So they may end up having HOA fees and CDD fees. It just depends, but they're aware of all those things up front. When they purchase the home, they're aware of what their costs will be. I don't know that there's anything specific the city can do to regulate the CDD once their bylaws are in place. I'll pass to Ken for that.
Yeah, we've had several of these CDDs, as Robin said. It's really kind of a super HOA. They have various legal powers. They actually are a governmental entity. They have to meet in the sunshine. They're subject to public records law. But the most critical thing is that because of what they are, they have the ability to go out and get zero interest bonds and finance. And so usually developers like that because it helps front the money for a lot of the developmental infrastructure costs, which do get passed down in the form of assessments to the property owners who, as Robin was saying, are aware of it. I mean, you can have issues that happen with HOAs that get disbanded too. I mean, as far as fundamental issues, but a CDD essentially is a governmental entity. It does not affect our tax millage or anything there. They do have the ability to do that. They have to obviously market to the ultimate consumer that is willing to buy into their development and their assessments as well as their normal HOA fees would have to be reasonable. But it seems to be something you're going to see probably more than not because of just the flexibility it gives to developers and essentially what they do. They'll often go out and validate these bonds before they even go out and spend the money on it. So there's a whole process of it, but it is really a governmental entity with governmental powers.
I've seen on the ballots, you see CDD elections.
Yeah. If the board would like, you can provide some additional assurance. Again, Brian Lamb, for the record.
Could you repeat? Mark, I garbled.
My apology, Brian Lamb, for the record, with Meritus, and I'm currently involved in well over 100 districts in the state, and wasn't through the market reactions with districts through the economic downturn, and what you'll find now, and kind of what the underwriters or the security element of the bond issuances learn, is not to overreach and provide some additional insight as to the investments for the CDD bonds, prevent what we had in the event of a market downturn prior. So you'll see there's some additional underwriting and scrutiny as the districts go out to do their essentially their financing for the market bonds and the phasing and those bond issuances to avoid any long-term overreaches in the event of another downturn. We're involved with restructuring probably 40 or 50 districts that were caught in that with that quagmire market reaction through the last downturn. Those elements for the investors are there. It's pretty much the same investors as prior, so they're still well aware of those issues and prevented some measure and put some measures in place in their underwriting to ensure it doesn't happen.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions, comments? What's the pleasure of the board?
I'll make a motion to recommend approval of PB 2021-09 and forward it to the city commission.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion of the motion? Okay, seeing none. Madam Clerk, would you call for the vote?
Board Member Wood,
Yes.
Board Member Burris,
Yes.
Board Member Carr,
Yes.
Board Member Driggers,
Yes.
Board Member Thurston,
Well, abstain.
Board Member Rodwell,
Yes.
Board Member Jones.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you very much. That completes 2109. Mr. Burris, are you still there?
Yes, I am, sir. Yes, I am.
Okay. I might have to step out of the room in a moment, and I'll let you take my place for just a moment. But let's begin item PB 2021-12. This is townhomes at Walden Lake preliminary plat and waiver. Okay. Staff. Okay, Robin Baker is about to speak, and Mr. Burris, you're running the meeting. Okay.
Good morning, Robin Baker again, Senior Planner with the Planning and Zoning Division, and I have been sworn in. You all were sent a revised agenda last night stating that staff was requesting a continuance to this application. The applicant is objecting to that continuance, so we're going to continue with our presentation as normal with a couple of different options at the end as we move through the public hearing. So PB 2021-12 is a preliminary plat for townhomes at Walden Lake. It includes a couple of waiver requests. As we discussed earlier, a preliminary plat is a draft proposal by a property owner and or developer, which is reviewed by staff and the planning board. The purpose of the preliminary plat is for the city and other agencies to provide the developer direction in the early stages of development prior to a lot of resources being expended on the project. It allows us to make all the comments that need to be made so they know going into the construction plan what needs to be changed. The request is a preliminary plat to establish a 104-unit townhome development with a waiver request from the requirement of a 50-foot right-of-way and a dead-end street. The site is located at the northeast and southeast corner of intersection Griffin Road and Turkey Creek Road. The zoning on the property currently is the Walden Lake Planned Development District and has a future land use of residential 6 on the piece to the north and commercial on the piece to the south. The proposed density at 14.13 acres of the proposed, supposed to say 104-unit townhome development, would have a density of 7.43 units per acre. This is an overall view of the plat on both sides of Griffin Road. I think it's important to note that historically in 2006, the PD was updated to allow residential uses in these 2 units. Prior to that, they were, I think one side allowed residential, but the other was slated for commercial. But in 2006, they amended the PD to allow these townhomes in these units. This is the rendering that was submitted by the applicant. This is not required at the preliminary plat stage, instead would be required at the construction plan phase. Staff will take a closer look at this at that stage to make sure that it meets the requirements of the townhome regulations. So a waiver request is being asked for relief from the section that requires a cul-de-sac at the terminal end of any roadway. So essentially, for emergency purposes, the city requires a cul-de-sac at the end of dead-end streets so that fire trucks, solid waste trucks have a way to turn around and get back out. In this particular development, they are showing a dead-end street that would serve a couple of different lots. But in discussing with the applicant, they're going to be able to pull those solid waste trucks or the bins up to the road, and the trash will be received there. So there'll be no reason for any emergency vehicles or solid waste trucks to have to go down that dead end street. So they're asking for a waiver to the cul-de-sac requirement. They're also requesting a waiver to allow a dead-end street. The dead-end street would be approximately 80 feet long. Engineering department had no objections to the request, stating that the roads are planned to be private. Solid waste had concerns with the safety of the trucks, like we mentioned before. but the applicant and Jill Sessions came to an agreement about the trash placement for the unit's trash receptacles, and no other agencies had any objections to that request. This is just a graphic showing you that area where the dead-end street is there, the yellow piece. So as you can see, there's several units there that are served by that dead-end street, but they'll be able to, with the agreement they made with Jill Sessions, put the trash receptacles at a different location so that the truck won't have to back up. They're also asking for a waiver request to the 50-foot right-of-way requirement to allow a 33-foot wide and 40-foot wide tracks, which will encompass the private roadways. So the roads in this development are slated to be private, which is the only reason we would allow them to have a reduced right-of-way. The pavement width is still going to meet the standards of the code. It's just that extra space in between that they're asking for a reduction. And again, the engineering department had no concerns. So before we talk about the recommendation, I just wanted to discuss why staff was asking for a continuance prior to this meeting. In general, with preliminary plats, I think staff can move forward most of the time knowing that there's changes needed to the site plan, because after all, that's the purpose of this. But we would like for what you see to be the final product, so you have a good understanding of what it's going to look like. In the beginning, the only issues were that the buffers were not shown on the plan that are required by the code. And because of that, there's certain areas that they're showing parallel parking. Some of those spaces are going to be affected. And if all of those spaces are wiped out, then they may not be able to provide the proper amount of guest parking spaces. Now, generally on a plat, parking spaces aren't required to be shown. So it's kind of a catch-22. But there are specific requirements for this area of Walden Lake to provide some sound barriers to the industrial development to the north. So when this went under the conversion in 2006 to allow townhomes, what was then M&M Plastics, it's LidWorks now, they came to the meeting and expressed concerns about the fact that, hey, you're putting a residential next to an industrial development. I want to protect my business to make sure that people aren't complaining about noise and that sort of thing. So there were some noise studies that were submitted by both the applicant and the objector. And at some point they came to an agreement that they would erect a 20-foot wall that would taper down to 12 feet in certain areas. It required certain landscaping. It required that the buildings would be oriented a certain way and separated so far from the property line. And unfortunately, they're showing a couple of lots in the area where lots should not be. They're required to be 70 feet off the property line, and there are a few lots shown in that area. Quite honestly, it was just something that was missed in the review of the conditions, and so it wasn't a required change at that time. We had a discussion with the applicant about the required changes, and all of those changes have been submitted to the applicant. I'm just going to read those on the record because the two options at this point, if the board chooses to move forward and make a vote today, staff would ask that for the sake of the property owner to the north, that we would make the motion specific to these conditions, that these have to be changed moving forward. So the first change is a required perimeter buffers per section 102, 1373, and 1374. The western boundary of the southern piece contains a utility easement that will not allow the 12 parking spaces shown. So those 12 parking spaces are going to have to be removed. The PD conditions require that no inhabitable structure be located within 70 feet of the northern property line adjacent to LidWorks. There are a few buildings lots that will need to be adjusted or removed to meet this condition. PD conditions also require at least a 4-foot wide buffer strip on the south side of the wall that should be shown, although technically this is one of the buffer areas that is actually going to have to be 10 feet. So that'll be looped into the first one. There's also a requirement for a water feature on the north side that will need to be shown. The water feature itself doesn't have to be decided now, but they just need to maybe make a note on the plat that states a water feature, you know, as required by the conditions, will be located in tract, blah, 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 you know. And then after the above changes, are made, then staff would need to verify that they are providing the ample amount of guest parking spaces. So if the board decides to move forward with this application today, we would recommend approval subject to these conditions that were stated on the record that will have to be changed at the construction plan phase and ultimately shown on the final plat. Do you have any questions? Oh, real quick, I'm sorry, to answer Mr. Brown's question. This is part of a greater PD, but ultimately that's the schedule of events. Okay, we do the rezoning first if it's required, and then if it is a development that is going to sell individual lots, they are required to go through this preliminary plat process. The next stage would be construction plans, then the final plat, which would be recorded and actually divide up the property the way that they're showing. So to answer your question, Mr. Brown, yes, this is the next step in the process. These units within the Walden Lake Planned Development District do allow townhome development. And this is just the next step in the process where they have to show us how they're splitting up the property and how it will be developed. Sorry.
No, you know, given the potential for us to make that approval with those conditions, I think it goes back to the first case today. We will then get we will then have this opportunity to see the final plat, and it probably won't make it to that stage without those items being addressed, correct? I mean, they'll work with you on from there to the construction plans, and then we get a final plat, and we'd see that again, correct?
And ultimately, staff would normally be comfortable moving forward, knowing that we've communicated those changes to the applicant and that they know on the construction plan stage they're going to have to address these things. But staff received communication from LidWorks attorney pointing out some of these things. And so because of that, we thought it was important to continue to make sure they were on the plan. But again, the applicant is objecting to that continuance. So we wanted to just make sure we made the presentation and gave you those conditions so that you have that choice. I believe that attorney is on the line with us today. You'll hear from him as well. But just wanted to make sure you had all those. But yes, with those conditions, that just puts it on the record that yes, they are required. And moving forward in the construction phase, we'll be able to make sure that those things are included.
Before we go any further, I just want to straighten out for a small technicality. Which case number? I'm seeing two case numbers here. I'm seeing case number PB 2021-12, and then unfortunately I'm seeing PB 2020-31.
It should be 2021-12.
-12 is the correct one, okay.
The Walden Lake Townhomes.
Okay. Yeah, you'll see on the second page, it's got the 31, so hold on. No, it's actually not you. It's actually in the paperwork. Sorry to bring that to your attention. I just want to make sure we're going to be looking at the correct case number here.
Pardon me if I missed the discussion, but they're asking for an entrance that's going to require the Walden Lake Homeowners Association to grant approval. Am I correct?
Possibly. There is a portion of Griffin Boulevard that is a private tract of land. Ultimately, I believe it was because they wanted to put up a gate and the city didn't want to have to maintain the gate that was in place there. Or would we allow them to do that on a public right of way? So there's a portion of Griffin Boulevard that is a private tract, but it doesn't encompass their whole property. You know, so they do have some other options, but based on the preliminary plat, I believe the access is shown within that private tract, and they would have to gain permission from the HOA to be able to get an easement, some type of ingress, egress easement across that tract.
And at this point, that's not been issued. That approval's not been granted.
It has, not to my knowledge.
That's your own? Okay.
I guess a question. I'm trying to digest the challenge to the continuance and what we have in front of us. When we come to the meeting, we expect a presentation of the project. It sounds like there's a lot of contingencies in here, and I'm not sure why we are addressing it now. And maybe hearing the I guess that, you know, the opposition to the continuance might help to explain
Yeah.
that to me. So-
We'll have the applicant up in a moment. I'm sure he or she will address that. Yeah. But is there any other questions for Robin? Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. The applicant? Oh, good. You're in the room. I was afraid we were going to have another virtual conversation. If you give us your name and address and state for the record that you've been sworn in.
I have been sworn. My name is Sean Cashin, Gulf Coast Consulting, 13825 ICOP Boulevard, Clearwater, Florida.
Okay.
So as Robin had stated, this project is within the community unit plan for Walden Lake. This 104 unit townhome development was actually previously approved. The construction plans were previously approved back in 07, 08. I think the approval was actually in 08, and we all know what happened in 08. So things didn't work out. So now we are coming back again with a different developer, slightly different footprint. It's still 104 townhome units, and that's why I'm here today. And I did speak with Robin briefly yesterday, and I did receive her email later in the day as I was off to another public hearing that I had last night, which ended pretty late. But as far as the conditions of approval, fully accepting of all those conditions, the 70-foot buffer from the north 20-foot high wall, I missed it. Shame on me. Never occurred to me that if you had a 20-foot wall, why you would need to be set back 70 feet, but we are going to have to adhere to that condition. I have talked to my client. We have 3 buildings that are within that 70 feet for that north phase. 2 buildings that are located to the western side, they are 2 and 2.5 feet. It's a very slight adjustment to move them down. The other building, which is on the east side, that is about 20 feet into the 70 feet. We're going to lose 2 units. And so that's going to be the end result for that. We'll lose 2 units. So at the end of the day, we'll have 102 units instead of 104. As far as some of the other concerns with the buffers and so forth, we have right now on the plan, I think we show 41 parallel parking or guest spaces. Perhaps a little bit overly ambitious on our part. We have a lot of those spaces that are located along the western border, that border Turkey Creek. If all those are, eliminated as a result of putting that buffer in, we can still get our required 20 parking spaces. We've already done a layout. So push comes to shove, if we lose all those spaces, some of which are in that utility easement, although I think we could, if there was not a buffer requirement, we could pave or put parking spaces within that utility easement, but that may be a moot point. So as far as the buffers, we can adhere to those. The setbacks, again, we'll lose 2 units, and we'll adjust the plan. The parking spaces will probably end up having 23, 24 instead of the 41 that we'd like to have for the guest parking. But again, we'll meet the code. So as far as the site plan, yes, it's not perfect, but we can make those adjustments. And I'll say this, and you probably all already know this, that there's rarely a plan that has not changed during the construction, or that isn't changed during the construction or final site plan. It's rare that they are exactly like the preliminary plan. There's always design changes and other things that require some changes. So in this case, we will have some changes. I was at the Board of Adjustment hearing yesterday, and I did talk to the Brannigans. They're here. They had concerns regarding the traffic and the stormwater. I did talk to them as far as the stormwater, and to allay some of their concerns. What we do, and what I do as a professional engineer, is we're very much aware and cognizant of shared water bodies or offsite areas that drain into our site. So we have a number of different surface waters that are along the eastern edge of both the north parcel and the south parcel. In our drainage model that we're about 90% through, we have taken into account all the adjacent areas that drain into these surface waters. The Brannikins live on Emerald Place, I believe. Emerson, I'm sorry, Emerson Place. Their development is actually part of our drainage model. And so the things we're accounting and accommodating for all the offsite drainage areas. And we're also going through our analysis to ensure that the peak rate of runoff, as well as the design high water and all the surface waters, we're not adversely impacting or raising that design high water. Again, we're cognizant of the shared retention areas that we have. And so we're taking measures to ensure that our stormwater meets the SWIFT regulations as well as City of Plant City. So we will be doing that. There was another question regarding traffic. Yes, there is going to be traffic generated for these now 102 townhomes. We have not been asked to perform a traffic study. I believe a traffic study has already been performed for the, I want to say the Walden Lake Golf Course redevelopment. And so that has already been performed, and maybe perhaps that's why we have not been asked to perform a traffic study. But anyways, but I will say that, again, as part of the community unit plan, in which the roadways, the utilities, schools, et cetera, the other concurrency issues at the time, they were all taken into account when this plan was approved for the 104 townhome units. As far as right-of-way width, just one other point. In order to, well, we have to propose private roads with the reduced right-of-way in order for us to have the parallel parking. Because per the city's code, you cannot have parallel parking adjacent to a public road. It's just not allowed. So for us to provide the guest parking that we think that we need, we have to have the private roads, which will allow that. And these are in tracks. And again, the tracks are 33 feet and 40 feet as opposed to the typical 50-foot public right-of-way. That concludes my presentation. I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Where are you at on negotiating with the HOA for access off of Griffin into the property?
Well, I know Larry Britt, president of Walden Lake, he is here today. I had a brief discussion with him yesterday at the Board of Adjustment, or after the Board of Adjustment. They were just recently notified about our access going to connect into their private road. So I think they were caught a little off guard. And so they just, my plan is to get with Larry and have a discussion with them. There has not been an agreement formalized regarding that. And I apologize for us not reaching out to him sooner. But anyways, we will be talking to him and answering any of their questions and trying to get that agreement formalized.
Thank you. Questions for the applicant? Any questions? Thank you, sir.
Good, thank you.
Appreciate it. Yeah. We've heard from the staff and the applicant, and we now have the opportunity for public comment, citizen input. Is there anyone here that would like to speak on this matter? Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. We did, sir. Would you mind if you just wait a moment? I'll keep you right by that chair.
Ken Tinkler,
Mr. Tinkler is on the line. Am I correct? Can you hear me, sir? Yeah.
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes. Thank you. Yeah. We wanted to give you a position at the start of the public hearing. So if you would take this moment now to tell us what you wanted to say, and again, identify yourself, your affiliation, and state that you've been sworn in. So please proceed.
Good morning, board members. My name is Ken Tinkler. I'm with the Carlton Fields Law Firm, 4221 West Boy Scout Boulevard in Tampa. I have been sworn. My firm's land planner, Darren Taylor, is also with us on the line, and I'll introduce him at the end of my presentation. I've submitted a letter with exhibits to the city clerk, and I would ask that that letter be made part of the record and be distributed to board members. Has that been done at this point?
We're looking around. Stand by. Not yet. The answer is not yet.
All right. If that can be done during this process, that will certainly help as we get into the details. In listening to the applicant and the staff, I guess my initial comment about a continuance is it seems to be in the interest of everyone that you be able to see what exactly should be on this plan. My client is LidWorks. They used to be called M&M Plastics. As staff said, they were involved during the rezoning of this property to allow for residential use. And when they got this notice, and the site plan attached that we then got from the city, we were shocked to see that all of the zoning conditions were being ignored as far as the noise that deals with a 24-hour operating plastic plant. If you buy a drink at Burger King or any other convenience store, you've experienced our client's products. They make the lids that handle for those particular hot and cold drinks. So it's something that's been in Plant City a very long time. What we did in our letter, and what Darren will get into a little more detail, is itemize the conditions that Plant City set and how this preliminary plat doesn't meet them. I think the whole point of having a public hearing is for the public to be able to see what it is the applicant is proposing. When the proposal violates your very zoning, I think you should reject this particular plan and send it back for revision so you can see exactly how this will be laid out. I agree that changes are often made from these plans, but not changes that usually don't start from a point that violates zoning. So I think you have an extreme case here where more time is needed. We attempted to reach out to the applicant, but did not get any calls back. So that is why we're here today. And I did want to ask my land planner, Darren Taylor, to walk you through these conditions that we have trouble with. Darren, are you on the line?
I am here. I don't see the picture, but I'm here. If everyone can hear me, I can go ahead and walk through that. Can everyone on the board hear me right now?
Yes, we can all hear you. Please proceed.
Thank you, sir. My name is Darren Taylor. My address is 2015 South Monroe Street, Tallahassee, Florida, and I have been sworn in. I'm a certified land use planner with the Carlton Fields Law Firm, and I have over 20 years of experience in land use planning here in Florida. And of course, the firm represents LidWorks. Clearly, as Mr. Tinkler was stating, this project is in the larger Walden Lakes PD, and there are very specific conditions of approval that were established in the noise mitigation plan. And these very specific standards were put in place in order to ensure the viability, the long-term viability for LidWorks as an industrial project. And also, these are the minimum conditions in which residential can be placed on this property. So it's reasonable to expect the applicant to analyze and demonstrate that the proposal of the site plan meets those conditions. In this case, other than the noise wall, the applicant completely ignored those conditions, and in his testimony, it appears he might not have been aware of those conditions. So once we found out about this, and we researched and we analyzed on our own and looked at those conditions, and these list of conditions, there are certain things that clearly apply at the site plan level, and there are other conditions that will apply in the future. So it's important for the applicant as they move forward to meet all of those conditions. And specifically regarding the site plan does show the noise wall. However, it doesn't show that after the noise wall, there were very specific conditions, not only on size of buffer, but also on the opacity standard for the landscaping that has to be met. It's very specific within your that PD condition. In addition to that, there's a clear separation between not the wall, but the property line and 70 feet in order to have where you cannot have any sort of residential structure be placed. and that has to be met on the site plan. In addition, there is, as staff had mentioned, the fact that a water feature or some type feature has to be placed close to the northernmost units to also help to mitigate as far as any sort of noise for the any future residents there. Now, there are other specific conditions as well regarding the placement of the wall and also the from the 20 feet to the lower wall. And because the applicant hasn't demonstrated exactly where that where the wall emanates and where those reductions are occurring, you know, we're having to look at it and determine whether it meets that requirement when it should be the applicant that is meeting those conditions. So as I'm basically to summarize, the burden is on the applicant, not us, to demonstrate consistency with the noise mitigation plan. And the applicant has failed to do that. And so for that reason, this application should not move forward until all of those applicable noise mitigation conditions have been addressed. And commissioners, I'm available to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, board members. We'd be happy to respond to anything, and we appreciate the opportunity to address you today.
Thank you, sir. I'm looking at the board to see if they have any questions of you. I'm getting nods of no, and we do have your letter, by the way, in front of us now. Yeah. Is there anything specifically you wish to say about that, about the letter? I know you've talked all about it. Any specifics? Yeah.
Well, I think one key thing to add is if you look at page 2 of the letter, you can see the location. LidWorks has been there with various names, but the same family since the 80s. And they obviously were very concerned about the idea of residential south of them. And that is why they worked so hard to have these conditions put in. They're very obvious in the PD plan, and there's even a recorded notice for future owners that there is a plastics facility and that they are waiving any objection to that facility as they would have future owners or tenants or anything along those lines. And obviously, with Plant City's focus on building a strong economy, this is something that should be preserved while future development occurs. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you. Again, last chance, board. Any questions for the applicant? I mean, for the commenter? No? Okay, thank you, gentlemen. We're going to proceed now to other public comment. We have a citizen anxious to talk. So if you would step forward, give us your name, address, and state for the record that you've been sworn in. Yes, sir, if you give it to the clerk, please.
My name is Charles Brannigan. I'm at 3113 Emerson Place, Plant City. I've been sworn.
Thank you, sir.
I made up a little handout here of areas of concern that we have. Our property abuts the southern portion of this and there's a swale between their property and our property, which is one of my concerns. My first concern is ingress and regress from Griffin Boulevard. And the proposed roadway, as you mentioned, belongs to Walden Lake Homeowners Association. And as far as we understand, there's no agreement between them. And that's gated, and it's gated before their entrances. And it's gated from 10 at night to 5 in the morning. And since they won't be a member of Walden Lake, they would have to go out through the Walden Lake gate. Every time a resident would come in, their license number would be taken, and you'd have a back onto the trail now or to Alexander. The second thing I have is traffic congestion on Griffith and Turkey Creek. Turkey Creek's, I don't know, I didn't see the traffic study, so I don't know when it was done, but there's been so much more going on Turkey Creek. the amount of traffic there in the morning is with the school, with the convenience store at the corner and the daycare. There's no stacking lanes on Griffin. There's no stacking lanes on Turkey Creek. There's no designated right or left turn lanes. So you have free flow traffic. You have the school, which now not only you have school buses, you have parents who drop their children off, who line up along Turkey Creek. So adding another minimum, I had 208 trips a day to that intersection, to me, warrants a traffic study. The next is big thing for us is stormwater management. The southeast section of the property shows stormwater ponds and outlets into existing drainage swale. That swale was designed to carry the water from Emerson Place into that swale. In the late 90s, that backed up and it actually came up the street within 10 feet of my garage. And that's because there's a concrete inlet, the inlet got blocked. Okay, the city came in and cleared that out. But the school went in and put a fence along the property, along our property line, all the way to Turkey Creek. When they did that, they cut a swale. And when they did that, last year when we had the rains, we had 1.5 feet of water in our backyard that we had to pump into that swale.
Yeah, you're very low on time.
Oh, I'm sorry. The other is site view. I would like to see the trees stay on the portion of the easement. And the last overall is granting variances on roadway widths to increase density, something you really ought to be thinking about with all the plants that you're going to be getting in Plant City. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Are there any other public comments? Okay, let me do a quick wipe here. Yes, sir. If you give us your name, address, and state for the record that you've been sworn in.
Absolutely. My name is Jeff Hewitt. I live at 3422 Silver Meadow Way. I'm representing 2730 Turkey Creek Road, which is the Walter Lake Early Learning Center. My wife and I own this property. Our concern, I spoke with Mr. Cashin, but I did want to make this on record. Our concern is the buffer between the property and the daycare. We have asked for something more substantial than a PVC fence or a wooden fence. We've talked to him concerning possibly a masonry wall on the eastern and the southern side of the southern part. Because it'd be the southern and the eastern side of the southern parcel. Just want to go on record and let that be known that we do have concerns with the buffer there.
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Hewitt. Just 1 second, Mr. Brown. We're going to do a wipe. You give us your name, address, and state for the record that you've been sworn in.
Yeah, Nick Brown, 2762 Golf Lake Drive, and I have not been sworn in, and I didn't think I was going to come back to speak, so.
But you couldn't resist it, could you?
Well, I couldn't. I don't think my
I'm
question
teasing
was
you.
answered.
I'm teasing you. Raise your hand, please.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Yeah, I'm sorry, I misled the board by giving you the incorrect numbers before creating any confusion. What I think is important, and I don't think has been done as yet, is to identify exactly what the current PD, the Walton Lake PD, says in terms of the area under question. As I understand it, the area to the south of Griffin Road is Unit 40, and the unit in question to the north is Unit 56, both listed on the current PD as unplatted units. but there is a description as to what can be, that pertains to each of those units. I would like to, if I were in your position, I would want to see that up, what the current PD says for those, and what the new proposed platted unit says. That's it. You can't approve something until you know what the current PD says. And I don't think that's been made clear. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Are there any other public comments? I like to ask twice, just so in case anybody's shy. Any other public comment? Okay, well, that will close public comment. Thank you all very much. I appreciate it. Staff, do you have anything you wish to add? Maybe you want to comment on some of the stuff said? Yeah. She's very conscientious.
So yes, I would. Robin Baker, Planning and Zoning Division. So I'm just going to go through some of the comments that were made and answer. So to Mr. Tinkler's comments, I just want to, obviously we're the ones that asked for the continuance, so I'm not trying to make this thing go forward. Just want to understand that the plat is not a preliminary site plan, okay? We do treat it in that same sense because we are using it as a tool to help the developer be ready to move on to the next stage. But a plat in general is just a separation of land. And at the end of the day, it's to set up what areas are being dedicated to it, to the public, to an HOA, what are the lots going to look like, that sort of thing. So some of the detail that Mr. Tinkler is asking for is not something we would normally look for at the stage. We would look for it at the construction plan stage. Those conditions that are part of the PD, they're part of the PD. So when I look at the construction plans, I'm going to go through those one by one to make sure that they're showing each of those conditions on the actual construction plans. Now, what's missing from the plat at this point, if you choose to move forward today, is like we discussed, the buffers need to be shown. The wall is already labeled on the plat, which is all we would really ask for. We wouldn't ask for any details of the wall at this stage. We would just be looking for a label, which they are showing. And then, as we mentioned in those conditions of what needs to change, we're going to be looking at those parking spaces. Are they still going to be able to achieve the parking spaces? But again, that's something we do at the construction plan phase. So some of the things that the opposition is looking for are not normally the things we look at on a preliminary plat, because it is essentially just a plat. It's not a preliminary site plan. Okay. On to the citizen comments. I just wanted to talk about the traffic study for just a moment. Whenever this converted to allow townhomes in 2006, a transportation study was not conducted at that time. And the reason why is because these particular units were allowed to have commercial uses. So those are much more intense uses. They generate much more traffic than a townhome does. And so it was determined at that time that a transportation study was not required. Now, at this situation, it's been so many years since the previous transportation study was conducted. We thought that it was important, but we already had an active transportation study that was ongoing with the Walden Lake PD rezoning. And so we have verified that these counts for the townhomes are going to be included in that. Now, as of right now, that transportation study is not complete. We are waiting on the final revisions to that. But they have looked at this intersection as well as all the other intersections impacted with Walden Lake. There are going to be some improvements that will be required at this intersection as well as others, but we don't know exactly what those are yet because we're waiting on the final report. And those will be, any requirements of that report will be implemented at the construction plan stage. It's not a City of Plant City roadway, so it's all subject to county approval. But it will be looked at the construction plan stage. We have discussed with the applicant about the trees remaining along the Emerson side, and I believe they're showing on the plat, they're showing that as a 60-foot drainage easement in that area. So there's no development proposed along the back of those lots there. And I believe they plan to try to preserve as many of the trees in that area as possible. They are required to do the buffers, but in that situation, if they're willing to retain the trees, we would encourage that. And in fact, the code encouraged the retention of trees and then including them in the required buffers. So hopefully through the construction plan phase, when we're able to see the actual location of all those trees, we'll be able to help those concerned citizens with that. And then also just wanted to state that the waiver request is not to reduce the roadway width. As I stated in my presentation, they're not reducing the pavement width. It's only the right of way, which is the space outside of the roadway, which is generally made up of open space. There's required grassed areas, sidewalks, those types of things. Because these are private roadways, they are still required to install sidewalks, but they're not really held to the same standard other than the pavement width. The pavement has to be the same, and they are keeping that the same. You know, any negotiations of buffers additional to what's already required will have to be between the citizens and the applicant. And I think that's all I had, unless you had any specific questions.
I guess one specific, just on that last comment about the buffers, are you referring to the, they could talk about the type of buffer? So whether it's a masonry or? Correct. Okay. So
the code does not currently require them to do a masonry wall. They can if they choose to, but that would be a discussion between the applicant and the citizens as to what goes there, and they would just have to show that on the construction plans when they submit them.
I'm going to put you on the spot.
Oh,
But I do that. I've done that before. Yeah. Because I know you're very diplomatic, but I also am extremely concerned about your workload. When we're doubling up meetings, you've got commission meetings where you're working and sending out memos at 7 o'clock at night and all that. So, but give me a one-word answer. Would you prefer that this be continued? Yes or no?
Wow, I feel like I'm on the stand.
You are.
Only yes or no with no explanation.
No.
I really don't have a preference at this point.
Okay, thank you. That's
We've
fair.
stated the conditions.
I didn't give you that choice, but you took it. Still diplomatic.
so it's clear the staff is proposing continuance was the last.
That was.
I know.
That's what we thought as of
the
last night. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, well, thank you. Is there anything else the applicant wishes to add? Yes, sir, if you come forward and say whatever you like.
Sean Cashin, and I'll be brief. When I spoke to Robin yesterday or last night about the continuance, our project was originally on the schedule to be heard February, and then it was over into March, and here we are, April. There have been numerous issues, things we've tried to overcome with the city staff. And so when I heard about her concerns for this meeting to try to allay those concerns, I talked to my client, we had discussions, and basically, I know the plan that you have now is not going to be the final site plan. Again, final site plans look different than preliminary plans. There's going to be minor differences. In this case, essentially, we're going to lose 2 units to maintain that 70-foot buffer. We're going to be losing some guest parking. Instead of 41, we're going to have about 22. So about 19 parking spaces will be eliminated to meet the city code, but we're not going to have as much guest parking in order to meet the buffer criteria. So the site plan will look a little bit different. Regarding the swale and the culvert and the situation with the surface water that is shared, I was not aware of the flooding problem that occurred fairly recently because of the pipe that was clogged up. I will say that we are aware of the drainage that's going to the swale, the shared surface water, very much cognizant of it, and we're going to ensure that we're going to make the situation better and not worse. That's what we do. The trees along that buffer too, we're trying to save those trees. Most of those trees will be saved. We try to maintain the natural buffers where we can. It's just good, being a good neighbor, good policy. And to Mr. Brown, I believe the units are actually, it's unit 44 and 56B.
44.
Yeah, 56B. It's. I tell you what, I had to get a magnifying glass to look at the plan because it's a little squirrely in some areas. But it is 44 and 56B, and those units do, and the verbiage for the tracks call out for 42 and 62 units for a total of 104 on that community unit plan. So,
Well,
thank you all very much.
questions for the applicant? Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Cashin. Whew.
Well, I may be the only one that's still confused.
Okay. So what's your
Well,
thoughts?
and I just need some help walking through this. Okay, the letter from Carlton Fields talks about unaddressed items. And I guess when I hear this, I don't see that these items were requested in a waiver. I don't know that, I guess I don't know how to respond to what is being described here. So I don't know if the staff needs to specifically respond to these, or if we should, but I guess on one hand, we're hearing things are incomplete. The staff has asked for continuance. I'm not real clear if it's to address these things, you know, so it just all seems vague to me. I don't know what I'm missing. I don't know.
Are you leaning towards a continuance?
Well, I guess, I mean, I could resolve it here if I understood exactly where we are.
I think Ms. Baker's got something to say on that.
So the letter you're reading is the reason that we requested the continuance, because there are some items, again, the loss of the lot that he's talking about, because there's certain buildings that are in that 70-foot encroachment. That's really the only thing that is kind of fueling the continuance request, because the lot layout is going to look slightly different. And staff just, in general, wants what you're looking at to be, you know, what you're approving, right? But as I said, a lot of the things that they're asking for on that list, the detail that they're asking for is not really something that we would look at the preliminary plat stage. So, like I stated before, the only changes that you would see if you choose to continue this today, the plan that would come back would show, as Mr. Cashman said, 2 less lots, because there's one area that can't meet that 70-foot setback. You would see buffers around the perimeter of the property that weren't labeled on there before, and a little less parking spaces. Basically, those would be the 3 changes that you would see. And possibly a note addition to address the fountain that's required.
So those are changes, but right now the applicant has not requested a waiver. He's just verbally saying he would make that change.
Right, he doesn't need to request a waiver. He's going to be required to make those changes, one way or the other. So he's not asking to not make those changes. It's just what's before you doesn't show them. So whether we decide to continue today and he makes those changes at the construction plan phase, or if we continue to the next meeting so that the plat that comes back shows those things, that's up to you.
Okay, and I heard the applicant's concerns about, we started in February, now March and April. I don't quite recall all the reasons for those postponements. Do you?
For the most part, it was changes that were requested, and also a transition in engineering staff for some decisions on the waivers that were requested as part of the right-of-way reductions. We just recently acquired a new city engineer, and so it took us some time to get engineering's review of those requests. And so there were a couple of times that it had to be, and it was never on the agenda and continued. It just, that was the date they wanted to go to. We just couldn't go to that date because we weren't quite ready.
Okay, so that was internal to our ability to accommodate the earlier date.
Correct.
To clarify that point, it's not unusual to take a couple of months, right?
No, and in fact, our schedule states in bold language that plats do not follow a specific schedule
Okay.
for
Okay.
that reason.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I guess my last comment is that for the past several meetings, I've expressed some concern about when we come here and we're looking. I'd like to approve what's going to, I'd like to be approving what is really being proposed. And I'm concerned about some of, like, especially when it goes into the construction period, and we're not involved anymore, then you just assume it's moving. And so it leaves me with, I think it's going to be what I heard, but what did I approve all these contingencies? So I'd like to not have as many of those, which I've been saying. And so, yeah, I'm leaning towards continuance because I'd like to come here and have a proposal that is almost in line with what's going to be proposed, and especially not including items that we expect before we even come to change it.
Right. And you will get a chance to look at this again at the final plat stage, but quite honestly, there's times where the final plat has a lot less detail because the buildings aren't there. You're just looking at lots at that time, so.
And one of the other conditions that we're running into is that, back in 2008, and I remember that, we did a lot of work and a lot of proposals were presented. That's a long time to just pick those up and represent them as they were when it comes to transportation, because a lot of other things have changed, including concurrency with school and population. So, I just discourage us from thinking or even suggesting that we're just going to pick up from 2008 and 2021 and say, yeah, we already looked at that. I don't think we can consider it that way.
Mr. Jones, looked like you had something to say.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. Actually, I was in agreement before we started. When we've got the best staff and they recommend something, I'm inclined to go that direction. But it's not just that. I hate to put it back on your plate and have to do this again. I don't like to postpone things. But it sounds like the developer needs some more time with the HOA. We've got LidWorks, that is a great community partner. I think we need to work with them more. We've got residents in the area that need to be worked with. It just seems like this overall project is just being rushed. And I think it needs more time. So I'm in agreement with the continuance. That's where I stand on it.
Any thoughts to share? Mr. Driggers, Thurston?
I'm inclined to agree with everything you guys are saying. The only thing that I'm wondering is that it sounds like in a preliminary plat, while it would be nice to see a lot of these things, this is not completely uncommon to be just at this point. And we can approve this with those conditions being met, which would allow for the next time we see this for it to be much further along. And obviously we'd have the opportunity at that point to not move forward if those conditions are not being met. I don't think Robin's going to get it to us if those conditions aren't being met. So that's my only, hesitation with continuing to just move things out, and you see the length of the agenda today. This is another one, next time we come, and that'd be my only hesitation, but I'm inclined to get behind whatever the board is generally comfortable with.
I agree with that too, because it sounds like all the points that were pointed out that are missing have been acknowledged both by the petitioner and by everyone. So it just sounds like we're just kicking the can down to the road another month, just putting something on paper that we all have already addressed. So
I have to agree with what's said. I think we should look at the continuance, no question. A lot of unanswered questions here.
All right, well, we'll need a motion and then we'll vote on it to see which way we go on this. Would anybody like to make a motion?
I'll move for continuance.
To a date?
Do you want to have a date? Well, we'll probably have to send notices out anyway, right? So at this point, I don't think it matters.
So what language should be in the motion? They continue it?
Move to continue, I think is what
Just move to continue? Period? Okay. Bonnie's made the motion. Is there a second? Mr. Rodwell seconds the motion. How about discussion of the motion? Is there any?
I just like to say, I mean, it is a tough decision. I totally agree with what you're saying. We do have a lot on our plate, and then the public has to come back, and we're just continuing and spending more time. But I think if it was one question, I think it'd be something different. But I'm hearing multiple questions on this one. That's why I'm thinking of continuance.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's multiple.
All right. Madam Clerk, you can call for the vote, please. The motion is to continue this item.
Board Member Wood,
Yes.
Board Member Burrs,
Yes.
Board Member Carr,
Yes.
Board Member Driggers,
Yes.
Board Member Thurston,
Yes.
Board Member Rodwell,
Yes.
Board Member Jones.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Motion passes 7-0. Yeah. Next item, PB 2021-20, Holloway Landing preliminary plat. Yes, sir. You're back up.
Yes, for the last and hopefully short one.
Well, we'll see. Maybe we can drag this out. Well, I mentioned coffee when we started. Now it's going to be lunch when we finish.
Planner with the City of Plant City and have been sworn in. The last item before you is PB 2021-20 for Holloway Landing preliminary plat. Again, this is just a draft. I won't read the whole thing. Again, we've covered it a couple times today. This request is for a preliminary plat to establish 90 lots, single-family home subdivision located at 3005 Jack Tucker Road. It's currently zoned R1 single-family dwelling district with a future land use of residential 4. At 28.78 acres, the proposed 90 single-family lot subdivision would have a density of 3.12 dwelling units per acre. Here is a proposed preliminary plat. And then staff has reviewed this preliminary plat for Holloway Landings for consistency with the technical requirements of Chapter 94, Chapter 102, and the Imagine 2040 Plant City Comprehensive Plan. Staff recommends the approval, staff recommends the planning board find the preliminary plat for Holloway Landing consistent with the technical items noted above, and recommends approval of the preliminary plat. That concludes staff's presentation, and Sarah Case, the applicant, should be on the line to answer any questions.
Could you show that preliminary plat one more time? Sure. The actual drawing. Okay, thank you. Any questions for the staff?
We have the sheets, sheet 3 or 6.
Yeah, it's not in the bigger plan, but there's kind of like zooming on each one of the bigger plans to show a little bit more detail. Yeah, correct. Yeah.
All right, thank you. The applicant, is someone present or on the line?
Yes, I don't know. If you
Would you please give us your name, address, and state for the record that you've been sworn in?
Yes, good morning. My name is Sarah Case. I'm with Econ South. My address is 6700 South Florida Avenue in Lakeland, and I'm representing the Williams family. I have not been sworn in.
How do we deal with that? I think the clerk, we're going to have to raise your right hand. We trust you. The clerk will administer the oath in just a second. Go ahead, clerk.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Yes, again, I say my name for the record, Sarah Case, representing the Williams family. They are owners of this project, the property. It's a 90 lot subdivision. You all have seen this before. We came through annexation, land use, and zoning, and now we're here for preliminary plat. We've worked very well with staff. We appreciate all of the comments, and we would Also appreciate a recommendation of approval as we move forward. I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Case. Let me see. We have a question here from Mr. Thurston, please.
Reminder on the size of the lots for this project.
Okay, the lot sizes. I'm sorry, I've got the plat in front of me and I don't have, oh, they're 60 by 125, 7,500 square feet.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you, Ms. Case. You stand by just a little bit longer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me go for a public comment. Is there anyone here that would like to comment on this Holloway Landing preliminary plat? I'll ask one more time. Is there anyone here who would like to comment on the Holloway Landing preliminary plat? Okay, that closes public comment. Staff, is there anything you wish to add? This case, is there anything that you wish to add? No.
No, not at this time. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Board, any discussion? Any thoughts to share? Any comments? No? Can we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to recommend approval of PB 2021-20, forward it to the City Commission, finding consistent with Imagine 2040.
I'll second that.
We have a motion, Ms. Jones, and a second by Ms. Carr. Any discussion of the motion? Motion's clear. Madam Clerk, call for the vote.
Board Member Wood,
Yes.
Board Member Burris,
Yes.
Board Member Carr,
Yes.
Board Member Driggers,
Yes.
Board Member Thurston,
Yes.
Board Member Rodwell,
Yes.
Board Member Jones.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the public hearing portion of our meeting. I'd like to at least do attendance report. We had 2 absences and we need a motion to accept the attendance report.
I'll make a motion to accept the attendance report.
That's Mr. Thurston. Is there a second? Ms. Carr? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Call for the vote.
Board Member Wood,
Yes.
Board Member Burris,
Yes.
Board Member Carr,
Yes.
Board Member Driggers,
Yes.
Board Member Thurston,
Yes.
Board Member Rodwell,
Yes.
Board Member Jones.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, we have 2 other items that we've been rolling forward. We have a notice discussion, which might be time consuming. So I would prefer to defer that, but what's the pleasure of the board?
I'd agree.
Or I would defer
that.
I don't know if y'all can hear me, but I would defer. I think we've been meeting a long time, ready to just get people back to their regular days. I'm okay with deferring those other items.
The hybrid meeting discussion too, if we defer it, then we have to stay a hybrid meeting. Okay.
Obviously, with our technical challenges this morning, I mean, it's like maybe we should move away from that.
Right.
And you see the number of people that utilize that option today.
So let me ask, how many are online today?
The only ones online were the ones that requested to speak.
Okay.
And Mr. Burris.
Okay.
Yeah, you asked that last time and there was 10 people we were
10
told.
people.
And then we asked if any of those 10 would please make a comment. I don't think we heard from any of the 10, to my knowledge.
10 people, it costs, I believe, around $900. So that's $90 a person it's costing, and we don't even give free popcorn.
What?
No, coffee or lunch.
No.
Like, for example, the attorneys that called in, one of those gentlemen was in Tallahassee.
Yeah.
So would there be an option for like a voice only option in that scenario? Or if we move away from that, they have to be here in order to put something on the record?
Well, I think if you're going to have voice only, then you're probably going to have some of those same costs involved. But because you're still going to, if you're going to have some kind of broadcast, they'd have to have the ability to get in. We do have the option right now of having board members call in, and I suppose, thinking about it, I guess you could have an option where somebody could call in. Do we have the ability to do that?
I know we did calling at the beginning of this.
So we could do a conference call where other people could get on besides, I mean, as long as it wasn't a lot of people, I think.
Would it require a staff to be here working in the room? You think you could handle a conference call? Jesse's not saying yes.
I'm before my time.
Okay.
I only got one or two, but it was the beginning of COVID, so I can't vouch for that.
Well, they might have been able to do, Ken Tankler's based in Tampa. He might have been able to come in, some of the people that were virtual. I know Mark Hudson has been virtual on almost all our hearings, and, he went to the went to the city commission meeting,
Monday night.
Monday night. So it wasn't, it's if it's offered, people will take it. But thinking about it, Nick, I think you could, but I guess my only concern is if you have a lot of people doing it, it might be under those circumstances you might want to have a hybrid meeting if that happens.
Those people will not be able to see anything that's on the our board here.
Right.
They'd only be following from.
Yeah.
Maybe a board member could do it, but they'd be following from the agenda and material that was sent to them earlier.
But we've always had the process where a board member could call in. And,
But they at least have the agenda and the packet,
Right.
whereas to Mr. Bart, the chair's point, a call-in person would not.
So what's our comfort level? Do you want to make a decision on the hybrid meeting today, or wait till another meeting?
I mean, I'm ready to make a decision. I do have one question though. In the phone calls, is it possible, Ken, to, if there is an attorney or an applicant that, it's just too far away, that it could be someone who is participating. I mean, they're either the applicant or representing the applicant, but kind of with pre-notice where they could use the phone calls just like the board.
Yeah, I think they could. I mean, this is probably no different than what it was before COVID.
Sure.
I mean, and I don't know that we've ever had a request for somebody to call in to have a witness on a case. We did, I know with the city commission, I don't know with the planning board hearings, we've had situations where commissioners have called in, but I don't know that changes it. I mean, the fact that the guy was in Tallahassee, probably, and more than likely he would have come to he would have actually come to the hearing. It was an important hearing for his client. He probably would have showed up from Tallahassee.
Well, I'm prepared today because I think that we had a situation with COVID that we needed to accommodate. I think we used the past history and the cost it doesn't seem necessary. And I was certainly one of the people that took advantage of the virtual and found it to be important under those conditions. So I think, without those conditions, I don't know that we need to carry the cost.
Which is a little under $1,000. Julie did an update to the numbers. Correct, Julie? 900 and change. Yeah. 960, almost. We could think of it as $1,000 revised. You want to vote on it? It'd be a vote to abolish the hybrid meeting.
You want to make the motion?
Is it abolish, or can we just return to the normal?
Sure.
I'd rather phrase it that way. Sure. Yeah, I move that we return to the normal, or to the
in-person
effective with our next meeting.
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion by Ms. Carr, and a second by Mr. Jones. Any discussion of that motion? You can hear it all this. Okay, Mr. Burris?
And I'm okay with voting for this today also. I'll be honest with you with the board. I'll share with you the reason I'm not there with you guys today is I actually tested positive for COVID last week. And I would have been able to follow the meeting along with the PDF. So I've been using the PDF that Robin Baker sent me along with watching my screen. So, okay. And I'm completely comfortable with, heaven forbid, if I have to miss another meeting for any other reason, just to call in and use the PDF that Robin sent me. So I'm completely comfortable going back to our original way of doing meetings. I'm completely comfortable with that.
Okay, thank you.
I have Bonnie Carr as being the motion.
Yes.
Motion, and Jones.
Yes.
So no further discussion. Madam Clerk, would you call for the vote?
Board Member Wood,
Yes.
Board Member Burris,
Yes.
Board Member Carr,
Yes.
Board Member Driggers,
Yes.
Board Member Thurston,
Yes.
Board Member Rodwell,
Yes.
Board Member Jones.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Thank you. Staff, we wanted 2 meetings this month. What about next month? Do we expect 1 meeting? Okay. And the 800-pound gorilla at Walden Lake is not going to come up next month then? I mean, because that would require its own meeting, I would imagine. So we'd end.
I guess they'll have a little bit of time to submit revisions, and if we get anything.
Okay. Okay. Well, you mentioned a traffic study earlier, so that brought it to mind. Okay.
I just, one comment, I feel like I'm talking.
Sure.
This whole meeting, but again, on the continuances, I think we got into that because we started having proposals come that weren't ready, and they started accumulating, and then they started dragging out. So, you know, we are where we are, but again, to, you know, and I know this puts pressure on the staff to get the applicants to complete if they want to be on the calendar, but it really respects everyone's time. It respects the people that come in thinking something's going to happen that day. So we really need to have complete proposals. And I think then we won't have this accumulation and all the continuances.
Yeah,
I agree. I think if we become lax now, we're going to get more and more.
Well, we got lax.
Yeah.
We got lax, and that's how we kind of got to this, I believe.
The last thing I wanted to mention is that you went at the commission meeting Monday, they overrode one of our decisions, the one from 2 weeks ago involving those apartments up across from the hospital. And it was a change in which we asked for, it was, the land was partially commercial and partially residential. Am I correct? Well, the request we got was to go all residential. And that's what we approved with the spacing between the buildings and the walk-arounds and things like that. But the commission did not approve it because they wanted commercial space adjoining the hospital.
The land use of the property, the current land use was commercial as to Park Road, and it was residential.
Right.
As to,
it was split. We were willing to make it all residential, but
correct.
when it went to the board, they did not.
I think one of the, you know, I'm thinking about it, one of the things that happens, you hear the comp plan very, very early in the process. So when you heard the PD, you had already made a decision that it was, that, you know, remember it was even before the transmittal. It might have been, you might have looked at it differently if it had come back and you'd seen what it was all. So in all fairness to you, I don't think this was in any way, I certainly wouldn't be defensive. I think I'll do a fantastic
I don't mean
job.
to be defensive. We need to learn from this experience.
But they did not amend the comp plan. Because they felt that the commission as a whole felt that the Park Road was a commercial corridor all the way up to Sam Allen. And if you look at it, where the hospital is, and the property on the right is all commercial, and the property on the left of Park Road is all commercial. They wanted to keep it that way because they had felt like they had put a lot of expenses and infrastructure in place to do that. I don't know that y'all would have had known about that at the time y'all considered the comp plan. So I mean, and it may be, we can certainly talk with Mark Hudson. Maybe y'all might want to see the comp plan again. You know, after, because you're seeing it very, very, again, you're seeing it early in the process. The city commission hears it twice. They see it at the transmittal stage, and then and they did transmit it, and they sent it on. So I mean, there would have been no reason to think that that their vision was any different. But I think that would have been, and you might have looked at it. You might have looked at it differently if you had considered both the comp plan and the zoning at the same time. So, but no, please don't be defensive.
No, I want to learn.
I thought y'all did a fantastic job.
I want to learn from the experience. Right. That's my point of bringing it up. Many of you are familiar with it. If you aren't, learn a little bit more about it so we can learn from the experience. Anything else to come before the board? We've been patient. Anything else? Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Griffin. Thank you, Mr. Brown. Have a good day. Meeting adjourned.
This may break the